Chapter 1437. Many people were dumbfounded by Gue Sanqing's sudden appearance. In the Thousand-Star City, many people were horrified. It seemed that there were still many unknown experts around Han Fei who hadn't shown up yet. This Gue Sanqing had been pretending to be a demi-venerable and mingling in the crowd. Even Jing didn't recognize him. However, at the last moment, he pinched 3 peak-level Dao-seeking experts to death and directly appeared in the Empyrean waterfall. In fact, even Jing didn't know. During the year when Han Fei wandered in the waterwood heavens, he tried many ways to get Gue Sanqing out. For this purpose, Han Fei and the old turtle discussed dozens of methods and tried them one by one. Finally, Gue Sanqing temporarily became a disciple of one person. Then, with the big secret of why the Fish Dragon King became strong as bait, he lured Gue Sanqing to leave the Baibei Royal City. After leaving the Baibei Royal City, he would be like a fish in the ocean and a bird in the sky. After that, Gue Sanqing had been cultivating in the sea-quelling painting. Even Bai Sujin and the others didn't know that there was one more person in the painting. At this moment, the Star Turtle was the most touched one. In the end, it was his own people who saved him. It seemed that the fellow Taoists of the Turtle Clan were more reliable. In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle said solemnly, "Han Fei, I've exhausted too much. I need at least 100 years of vitality and a heavenly awakening divine technique to make up for my consumption." While fighting, Han Fei said helplessly, "Old Yuan, this is not the time to blackmail me. Didn't you just suck that Igor's dry?" The old turtle said, "It's different. Just like when you absorb other people's vitality and souls, I can't completely take their vitality and energy for my own use, unless my soul and soul become one." Han Fei said, "Okay, let's talk about it after this battle." Han Fei punched out, and his voice spread across the world. "My fellow comrades, today the second one died. This person was the vanguard of the Sea Demon King City 1,800 years ago, a great demon of the 10,000 Demon Valley, and a mid-level venerable. Today, I will kill him with my saber." "Huh, well done. You're indeed my Martial Han. I'm impressed by you. The fiercest person in the world is none other than Martial Han. In just a month or so, he managed to kill 4 venerables. I'm impressed. Damn it, General Han's temper is just too much to my liking. We should have been this fierce a long time ago and killed those sea demon bastards of the Myriad Demon Valley." Someone laughed. "Stinky fishes, do you see that? Another one of you venerables has died. Are you happy?" At that time, the morale of the 1,000,000 soldiers was greatly shaken. Someone even mocked himself. "I was worried just now, thinking that something big was going to happen. I still underestimated Commander Han. Today, I will follow Commander Han's lead." The sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard everywhere in the 36 towns tour group. The old village chief grabbed the clothes of Wang Jie, he Mingtang, and the others tightly, trembling as he counted. "The ones who died, are they the legendary venerables?" Dumbfounded, Wang Jie looked at the sky. It should be right." Li Gang was so scared that he sat on the ground and murmured, "Gang leader is so powerful. From now on, who dares to bully the fish dragons?" Crack, just as everyone was shocked by the death of another Grand Elder, the sound of the mountain exploding resounded for 500 kilometers. "Huh!" The old voice shook the world. Above the Empyrean waterfall, the mountain had completely collapsed, and rubble was flying everywhere. A turtle shell more than 300 meters long floated to the surface of the water. At that moment, the Star Turtle became a venerable and his strength soared. At this moment, if the silver spear came again, the Star Turtle thought he could block it. But the breakthrough didn't end there. The Star Turtle had been silent under the Empyrean waterfall for too long and accumulated too much energy. Even though it had been quickly digested, it had only consumed less than 30% of its energy. The Star Turtle looked at Gue Sanqing. "My friend, please protect me for a moment." Gue Sanqing didn't bother to talk to the Star Turtle. In fact, he wanted to kill the Star Turtle more. He had occupied the Star Turtle's body, which was much stronger than Gui's Sanqing's. Han Fei was not in a hurry now. Whether the old turtle had the combat power or not, the Scattered Stars Island had one more venerable. Besides, creatures like turtles were born with strong defense power. More importantly, the Star Turtle was still making a breakthrough. According to his strength, he couldn't become a mid-level venerable. Han Fei felt sorry for him. The Black Hell Snail King's face was grave. It couldn't go on like this. It thought the Scattered Stars Island could be destroyed easily, but it didn't expect that the enemy had so many trump cards. It had mobilized all the forces of the 10,000 Demon Valley, but still failed to take them down. At that moment, the Black Hell Snail King made up its mind. If it couldn't win this time, the consequences would be unimaginable. With the temperament of this human being, he would never give it another chance. Inside the Saint Realm on the Wall of Death, a large number of big snails suddenly collapsed, and a big cocoon that seemed to have been there for a long time suddenly broke. This was the Black Hell Snail King's backup plan, which it would never use unless it was absolutely necessary. In fact, the Black Hell Snail King was well prepared. The 10,000 Demon Valley had been well hidden. The first person the Black Hell Snail King sent here was Chao Xian, a peak-level venerable. Because of this, Xue Xinqi had sent people to explore many times, but they all ended in failure. Although Xue Xinqi knew that the 10,000 Demon Valley had made a move, he didn't know how big it was, so he couldn't make any preparations. When the Black Hell Snail King discovered Han Fei's black fog body, it knew that since Han Fei had reached the Saint Realm, the 10,000 Demon Valley couldn't escape. As early as the battle began, the Black Hell Snail King had summoned everyone. However, it didn't think this group of people would be useful. In the Black Hell Snail King's view, most of them couldn't even reach the Sea Demon Realm and wouldn't be of much use. However, the battle on the Scattered Stars Island was far beyond its expectations, so it had to make this arrangement. The Black Hell Snail King crawled out of the big cocoon. In one step, it stepped to the teleportation array, looked at the more than 800,000 half-mermaids, and secretly confused them with the corrosive blood. In the end, the Black Hell Snail King turned into a big shadow and shouted, "I'm the Black Hell Snail King. All of you are my subjects. The 10,000 Demon Valley has started a war with the Scattered Stars Island. All of you, follow this king into battle." There was no telling if it was because these sea demons had all taken the corrosive blood, but after being fooled by the Black Hell Snail King, they all became hot-headed. Logically speaking, even though the Black Killer King was a king, if there were no familiar people to support him, he wouldn't seem all that powerful even if he appeared. But it was different in the Saint Realm. These half-mermaids seemed to have accepted the Black Hell Snail King and even howled, "My king." The 10,000 Demon Valley. There were less than 30,000 sea demons left in the 10,000 Demon Valley and the Blood Demon Valley. These sea demons couldn't even withstand a few rounds of attacks from Xue Xinqi and his people. In just a moment, the Stargate teleportation array was basically destroyed by Xue Xinqi. The 10,000 Demon Valley was wiped out, and the Blood Sea Valley was wiped out by Xue Xinqi alone. At this moment, the others were bombarding the 10,000 Demon Valley. Han Fei's decision was that there might be a lot of people here, and it was a dangerous mission. However, up to now, except for the 30,000 sea demons, the 10,000 Demon Valley was empty. Even the so-called cracked seal under Xue Xinqi's feet didn't move at all, as if it had been abandoned. Suddenly, Xue Xinqi's eyes narrowed, and he sensed a spatial fluctuation above the 10,000 Demon Valley. Xue Xinqi rushed out and roared, "Everyone, return to your positions and prepare to fight the enemy." Jiuyin Ling, Luo Xiaobai, and the others were bored and gathered together. Only Goldie was rampaging, drilling from one hole to another, taking his cat sons with him, enjoying it endlessly. Many of the people from the Empyrean waterfall knew each other. At this moment, Ning Jingyao was asking, "Little Nine, when can you pass the tribulation?" Jiuyin Ling replied, "Soon. Han Fei asked me to strengthen my body and then pass the tribulation together." Yui smiled and said, "Well, I really don't know how Han Fei grew up. How strong was he when he first came? It's only been a few years, and he's already the supreme commander? Du Jianglu said, "Be careful. We're all very strong. If we were on the Scattered Stars Island, we would definitely be the top force. But we're arranged here. There must be something very dangerous that needs us here, because ordinary people can't handle it." Granny nodded and shouted, "Big Yellow, come back." Suddenly, the space trembled, and a huge hole appeared in the sea. Then, Shueishenqi's voice suddenly echoed, "Everyone, return to your positions and prepare to fight the enemy." Swish, swish, swish. With high mobility, more than 3,000 people immediately rushed back. At that moment, the hole in the sky became bigger and bigger, and tens of thousands of half-mermaids rushed down. Immediately, the 3,000 people roared, "Prepare to kill the enemy." Someone laughed. "Fortunately, they're not very strong. There are very few sea spirits." Someone smiled. "There aren't many sea demons, either. Isn't it a bit overkill to deal with these people?" However, as soon as this person said that, he saw a big conch flying out of the teleportation array. "Oh, I was wondering what kind of expert it was, but it's just a junior venerable and 3,000 soldiers. That kid Han Fei is going to stop me with just you guys?" "Everyone," someone exclaimed. "Son of a B asterisk tisich. Are you kidding me?" Someone was speechless. "King? Han Fei wants us to stop a king? Is he out of his mind?" Shueishenqi roared. "It's just a projection of a king. Leave it to me." Shueishenqi held a big bead in his hand and leaped up, his aura soaring. He hadn't given this bead to Han Fei yet, because Han Fei had a lot more trump cards than he did. However, when Shueishenqi's power reached the intermediate venerable realm, a terrifying power suddenly enveloped him with a bang. A terrifying gravity descended and directly crushed Shueishenqi into pieces. The black killer snail sneered. "A junior venerable dares to challenge a half-king? You really don't know what's good for you." At that moment, Jiuyin Ling, He Xiaoyu, and Granny Yin were dumbfounded. He Xiaoyu pulled Jiuyin Ling and asked, Is this the power of a king?" The scene just now was too incredible and shocked many people. Shueishenqi, a venerable and the former supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island, was crushed before he could even resist a single blow. The black killer snail king reached out and pressed down. In his opinion, these people would definitely be killed when the pressure descended, and he didn't even need to take action a second time. However, that oppressive might was suddenly shattered by an invisible power. A golden book appeared in the sky. A voice rang leisurely. "Oh, it seems that you have a lot of projections. Why, does this one have the power of a half-king too?" The black killer snail king's pupils constricted. The newcomer was so strong. Didn't they say that the Scattered Stars Island didn't have such high-end combat power? A half-king. Although this person didn't seem to be a half-king, he shouldn't be far from it. The black killer snail king's voice shook. "Who are you?" My name is Han Guanshu." The third chapter. Into this chapter. Chapter 1438. Who is Han Guanshu? The Black Hell Spiral King didn't know. Even on the Scattered Stars Island, no one would mention Han Guanshu. The soldiers on the Scattered Stars Island changed frequently, and they usually only recognized the current supreme commander. Han Guanshu stretched out his hand, and a page flew out. The piece of paper morphed into the shadow of an azure dragon in the void and flew into the sky. "Oh, woo!" the dragon roared, and the conch's horn shook the sky. A six-layered spiral shield blocked the sky. Clang, after a deafening noise, terrifying ripples swept across the entire 10,000 Demon Valley. Wherever it passed, the waves rolled up sand, the reefs were shattered, and the seaweeds disappeared. Seeing that his attack was blocked by the shield, Han Guanshu chuckled and blocked all the blasts with an invisible force. At this moment, Shueishenqi was revived. A mass of essence blood was reborn in the sky, surrounded by a tremendous amount of energy and spiritual energy. In a flash, Shueishenqi reappeared in front of everyone. "General!" everyone exclaimed. Shueishenqi waved his hand. "I'm fine." Han Guanshu smiled. "I didn't expect that the Black Blood Royal City would give birth to a king. By logic, it's impossible for a king to be born in the Wall of Death. I'm afraid that you used the wrong method to become a king. The Black Hell Spiral King's pupils constricted. It's been a long time since anyone mentioned the name of the Black Blood Royal City. Human, you're not weak at all. You've reached the peak of the venerable realm. However, a half-king is still a half-king. You're no match for him. Shueishenshi asked solemnly, "What do you think?" The Black Hell Spiral King turned into a human being with 2 gongs in his hands, a horn on his head, and a suit of armor on his body. Han Guanshu chuckled. "It's a bit tricky, but I can handle it." Shueishenshi wasn't polite to Han Guanshu. "Your son wants to start a peerless battle, and you, as his father, have to do it." This was a battle that involved countless lives. There was no reason not to do it. Shueishenshi roared, "Everyone, follow me to attack the enemy." The Black Hell Spiral King waved his hand, and a mass of corrosive blood was quickly taking shape. Seeing that Han Guanshu didn't stop him, Shueishenshi said solemnly, "Is this the method of a king?" Below, no one dared to speak. How could they have the right to speak when the immortals were fighting? Jiuyin took a deep breath. She knew who Han Guanshu was. Although she had never met him, she had seen him in the Thousand Star City. Han Fei's father was powerful enough to defeat the Chu sect. Han Guanshu, with one hand behind his back and his right hand on the golden page in front of him, said casually, "King against king, general against general. You have 800,000 troops, and you want to bully the Scattered Stars Island's 3,000 troops? It doesn't make sense." At this moment, the Black Killer Snail King didn't care about how much it was. He was concerned that he had been stopped. The person in front of him seemed to be very casual. That temperament was arrogant and conceited, and his strength was definitely not weak. Although he said that he couldn't compare to a half-king at his peak, it was only relative. The Black Killer Snail King could not guarantee an absolute victory. After all, he wasn't in his original form. The Black Killer Snail King did not expect the human side to have so many high-level combatants. At this moment, he was a little worried. The situation on the Scattered Stars Island was weird. The sea demons lacked high-end combatants, and the low-end combatants hadn't made a breakthrough either, which was what worried him a lot. The Black Killer Snail King made a horn sound and said in a deep demonic voice, "You want fairness? When I return with the Black Blood Royal City, I'll give you fairness. Now, I'm going to destroy your Scattered Stars Island first." The more than 20 spikes on the Black Killer Snail King's body pierced through the void and formed black spirals behind him. The Stargate teleportation array that had been destroyed by Shueishenshi was opened again. Clatter, "Hey, it's just a projection of a king. Do you think I don't exist?" Han Guanshu sighed softly and flipped his right hand casually, and another golden page floated out. The page flew and turned into a sword, which split the sky and the sea as if it were splitting the heavenly river. It was so fierce. This calm and elegant attack caused everyone below to be dumbfounded. This man was so strong that he had no friends. However, it wasn't over yet. Han Guanshu flipped his right hand, and with a clatter, 3 pages floated in the air. One page cut through half of the seawater. Like a mystic light crossing the sea, it separated the Black Killer Snail King from the 800,000 half-mermaids that kept surging out. This page split half of the seawater. Like a mystic light crossing the sea, it separated the Black Killer Snail from the 800,000 half-mermaids that kept surging out. Suddenly, the surrounding space collapsed and separated the Black Killer Snail King from the 800,000 half-mermaids that kept surging out. Suddenly, the surrounding space collapsed, and the Black Killer Snail King left the 10,000 Demon Valley area. The last page blasted out a passage that led directly to the Stargate teleportation array. Shueishenshi glanced to Han Guanshu, and the latter nodded slightly. "Don't worry." The two only exchanged a glance and knew what each other meant. Shueishenshi was worried that 3,000 people versus 800,000 people, no matter how strong they were, they couldn't defeat the enemy. Besides, among the 800,000 people, there were not just half-mermaids in the demonization realm. No matter how few there were still thousands of sea demons. Of course, this was the Black Killer Snail King's doing. Some sea demons wanted to stay in the Saint realm and continue to grow stronger, so they had been suppressing their realms. The strength of these sea demons was also extraordinary. In this way, the 3,000 human soldiers were actually not a big deal. Among the 3,000 people, there were 6 explorers. Shuesh and Qi felt a great pressure. Even if they were explorers, they would go crazy this time. It would take them a long time to kill the 800,000 half-mermaids, even if they stood still, right? At this moment, Han Guangqiu separated the Black Killer Snail King and the 800,000 troops. However, before the two sides collided fiercely, in the army of half-mermaids, countless people suddenly seemed to have gone crazy. A half-mermaid raised his hands. For the glorious return of our king, I am willing to pay with my flesh and soul. Such people could be found everywhere. Among them, some of them rapidly increased their strength after using a secret method. There were also some people who, perhaps because they could not withstand the power or for some other reason, exploded and died one after another. However, their blood was converging. Dark green, corrosive blood was gathering. In the blink of an eye, blood-colored mermaids appeared one after another. Their strength varied from the sea demon realm to the sea spirit realm. Soon, 2 half-mermaids of the Tao-seeking state appeared. It wasn't impossible for them to increase their strength to the sea spirit realm through a secret method. After all, the greater the sacrifice, the better the effect of a secret method. However, they directly passed the heavenly tribulation and reached the Tao-seeking state? That didn't make any sense. Couldn't the great Tao of heaven feel it? The only explanation was that they were all the Black Killer Snail King. He was a king and didn't need to pass the heavenly tribulation. Or the corrosive blood had reached the Tao-seeking state, so the great Tao ignored their increase in strength. Meow, Big Yellow panicked. Old lady, can we not fight? I have my cat son with me. Granny Een sighed gloomily. I don't think Han Fei will send the 3,000 of us to our deaths. Let's wait and see, just as everyone was cheering themselves on, and some of them decided to sacrifice themselves for justice. Zhu Ling stepped in front of everyone, stepped into the channel that Han Guangqiu created, and stood in front of the Stargate teleportation array. Meow Xiao Jiao. Zhu Ling, are you crazy? He Xiaoyu's head was buzzing. Is Zhu Ling ready to die? Next to He Xiaoyu, the armorist sighed. Although we were somehow involved in this battle, we have seen the king and the most marvelous view in the world. The manipulator was confused. Doesn't General Han know that Xiao Jiao and Xiaoyu are both at the Empyrean waterfall? Before they talked any further, Zhu Ling waved her hand, and a 5-meter-long fish skin map suddenly unfolded. Crack, 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 giggle, a 300-meter-wide circular hole appeared in the sea. The directional teleportation array that was outlined by more than 10,000 lines instantly appeared. Swish, swish, swish. At this moment, a series of white figures suddenly appeared out of nowhere. A giant toad covered in poison appeared, and its tongue was as sharp as a blade. A ghastly white skeleton stumbled and charged into the battlefield. There were countless deformed creatures, including a combination of sea spiders and crabs, a monster with a fish's mouth, a monster with a turtle's head and a shrimp's body and wings, and a strange fish with eyes all over its body. Someone exclaimed, "Shoot! Isn't that the Soul Eater from the ancient battlefield?" Ning Jingyao shouted in surprise, "Look, it's the skeleton army from the underground city." Yi was lost for words. Underground city? Where did the skeleton army come from? As soon as she said that, a crystal-clear white skeleton, holding 2 knives, flew out on the head of a sounding snake. The skeleton glanced at the 3,000 human beings casually and then threw out the 2 knives, leaving 2 white marks. Wherever it passed, no one could stop it. After one strike, more than 100 half-mermaids were cut into pieces. Tens of thousands of bow-foot umbrella spiders rushed into the army of half-mermaids like prey. BM, everyone was stunned. F*CK. How did they get reinforcements? Looking at Zhu Ling, they realized that they couldn't have been brought here by Zhu Ling. However, they couldn't figure out how Han Fei reached an agreement with the skeleton army from the underground city. He could even summon the Soul eater from the ancient battlefield? The army of half-mermaids must have been dumbfounded too. What the hell were all these strange creatures? The rolling thorns, the jumping spiders, the giant toads that could be killed upon touch, the army of blue skeletons, and the deformed creatures. Du Jianglu laughed aloud. Huh, I was lucky enough to become a sea spirit and didn't have the chance to explore the treasures. Today I've seen all of them. Yi Qingfeng chuckled. I could detoxify the toad's poison. Don't worry and kill them. At this moment, everybody roared, kill them. Someone yelled, 3,000 against 800,000? I'm not scared at all, not to mention such powerful reinforcements. Someone laughed and cursed. God knows when Han Fei reached out to the underground city. It's true that a man who can be the supreme commander is indeed different. He Xiaoyu roared, you guys kill the enemies with me. Remember, don't mess up. First update, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1439. The creatures on the ancient battlefield and in the underground city were at least hidden fissures, especially in the underground city. Especially in the underground city, the weakest was an advanced hidden fissure, and the slightly stronger ones were at the sea spirit realm. When such an army arrived, even if their final number was less than 30,000, they were like 30,000 elite bandits, and almost no one could stop them. As for the corpse that had once guarded the burial ground, it held 2 scimitars in its hands, creating 2 curved watermarks. It was as if it was holding up 2 long silks at the bottom of the sea. In the sky, the Black Hell Spiral King had created a venerable clone and sacrificed tens of thousands of sea demons to create more than a dozen Tao Seekers and 1,000 sea spirits. It wasn't that it couldn't change anymore, but that the more masters it created, the more energy it would consume. At this moment, it was a great war, and both sides had invested a lot of troops. Once the masters on their side were destroyed, the balance of victory would probably slip away from them. At such a critical moment in the battle, not to mention a peak Exalt Realm expert, even a newly advanced Exalt Realm expert might be able to affect the entire situation of the battle. After all, the difference between a venerable and an explorer was too huge. A venerable could easily kill a dozen explorers in a head-on battle. However, a dozen explorers, even if they were half a venerable, might not be a match for a venerable. At this moment, the Black Hell, Spiral King, and Han Guanshu were fighting fiercely in the depths of the void. Compared to the Black Hell, Spiral King, Han Guanshu only turned the Tao and created all kinds of miraculous attacks. The illusion of an azure dragon struck the sky and the earth. The supreme sword light reached the heavens and the earth. There was a deafening sound that spread for thousands of kilometers. Boom, 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 endless energy spread in all directions. Shocked, the Black Hell Spiral King stared at Han Guanshu and gritted his teeth. Are you cultivating the legendary big dream heavenly book of the Yin-Yang Heaven? Oh, you're smart. Han Guanshu shrugged. I didn't expect that someone would still remember it. How powerful is it? Han Guanshu waved his hand, and the golden pages turned into a long silk that sealed the sky and the earth. 7 killing arrays were activated. The Black Hell Spiral King was shocked. He had underestimated the Scattered Stars Island after all. He thought that he could sweep the Scattered Stars Island with his projection. However, the result was horrifying. The other party had already prepared a response. However, the arrow was already knocked on the bowstring. It had to be released. The battle situation had already reached this point. As long as he increased his strength a little more, he might be able to win. Otherwise, how could the Black Blood Royal City advance into the Yin-Yang Heaven again? That was no different from the ravings of a fool. In the Sea Demon's sacred land, the Black Killer Snail King didn't want to use up all of his trump cards. After all, it wasn't easy to run the business for so many years. He knew that there should be several more venerables in the Thousand-Star City, and there might even be stronger ones. It wasn't that he didn't understand how humans worked. They were always so short-sighted, only looking at the pros and cons of a moment. As long as he could obtain the corpse of the Empyrean waterfall and swallow its demonic essence, King's aura and Taoist aura, he would be able to survive. At that time, his strength would greatly improve. Even if they couldn't take down the Yin-Yang sky in a short period of time, It was only a matter of time. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, all the remaining conches in the sacred realm were instantly destroyed. Another black, killer snail king walked out of the boundless blood energy. On the scattered stars island battlefield, Han Fei was fighting fiercely. The battle between the strong was in a wonderful balance. The people brought by the Black Killer Snail King were almost all intercepted. However, on the frontline battlefield, there were still 31 local explorers on the Scattered Stars Island. Including those from the 7 major sects and the big clans, there were only 59 people in total. And on the Sea Demon side, there were more than 100. Gui Sanqing had overdrawn his body just now. At this moment, he was standing under the Empyrean waterfall. Although he was a protector, he was actually just pretending to be able to fight. In fact, he was also recovering quickly. The Star Tortoise was making another breakthrough at an extremely fast speed. He was crazily absorbing a huge amount of resources. But at this speed, he couldn't succeed without half an hour. The Star Tortoise couldn't be blamed. He had been accumulating resources for too long and needed time to digest them. Besides, the Star Tortoise didn't look like a guy who was good at fighting. Making a breakthrough in a battle wasn't suitable for him at all. For a moment, on the frontline battlefield of the Scattered Stars Island, even though the humans' momentum was extremely strong, they couldn't withstand it anymore. 3 million sea demons, carrying marine creatures, kept attacking the Scattered Stars Island. Among them, there were several times more sea spirits and Tao Seekers than on the human side. It was already commendable that they could hold on for more than a quarter of an hour. In the sky, the Black Killer Snail King, who was fighting with Han Fei, said coldly, "Han Fei, even if you could stop me, so what? The frontline battlefield of the Scattered Stars Island is about to be broken. Millions of your soldiers are about to die here. How can you bear to do that?" Han Fei glanced at the battlefield of the Scattered Stars Island, and his voice reverberated between heaven and earth. He shouted again, "Is there anyone from the Thousand Star City coming to help? I'll only ask you this once. Yes or no?" The Black Killer Snail King's heart did a flip. How would the Thousand Star City react? In his expectation, there should still be venerables in the Thousand Star City. However, as long as there weren't any venerables, the outcome would be uncertain. Originally, if he had been given another month, he would have been able to send another quasi-monarch over. At that time, even if there were really venerables in the Thousand Star City, he wouldn't be afraid. Now, to prevent accidents, he had to do it himself. The Black Killer Snail King said, "There's no need to wait. At this stage of the battle, those who can come have already come. Besides, how do you know that they're not courting death if they come? How do you know that I don't have any backup plans?" The Black Killer Snail King's voice also came out, deliberately letting the people of the Thousand Star City hear it. "Han Fei, you can threaten and hint to those in the Thousand Star City who didn't take action to settle the score later. I can also hint that I still have backup plans." Han Fei frowned slightly. He also knew that some people wouldn't take action after all. Even the 7 major sects didn't arrange for students to come to help, because in their opinion, the casualty rate on the front line was too high. Those students were like treasures. How could he let them go? The only thing that surprised Han Fei was that he sensed that on the teleportation array of the Scattered Stars Island, several figures appeared with a swish. Who else could it be but Tengu, son of AB*TCH? Han Fei secretly cursed, thinking, "Tengu, what the hell are you doing? I have 1,000,000 F*King soldiers here. Are you the only one I need?" Mu Ling and more than 20 disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect came with Tengu. They should be Tang Ji's and Mu Ling's good brothers. At this moment, Tengu and the others controlled the fishing boat and rushed all the way to the battlefield. Mu Ling said, "You're about to pass the tribulation. This is not a place for us to fight." Tang Ji's eyes were firm. "Although I'm not strong enough now, one more person means one more combat power in the battle of the Scattered Stars Island. My father-in-law and my ancestor are here. How can we not come?" Mu Ling really wanted to say, "You idiot, we're my father and ancestors' levels. They're here to restrain the enemy. What about you? You're here to fight in the army on the Scattered Stars Island." In the sky above the outer city, a teleportation array was suddenly opened. As soon as it appeared, two figures, one big and one small, a man and a woman, walked out of the teleportation array. The man said, "Xiao Bai, you know the situation of the clan. I can only fight alone. I'm here to see if I can become a venerable." The newcomers were none other than Luo Xiao Bai and her father, Luo Tianhe. During the years when Han Fei left the Thousand-Star City, Luo Xiao Bai had been cultivating hard, giving birth to the Tao seed and awakening the divine skill of the Luo family. In the past few years, Luo Xiaobai's cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. Among the younger generation of the entire Thousand-Star City, no one could compare with her except Chao Qiu. In just 7 years, she had broken through 3 realms in a row and was already a peak-level enforcer. Luo Xiaobai's face was cold. "You fight your own battles, and I'll fight mine." Before Luo Xiaobai and the others left, a void crack was torn open, and 3 men and 1 woman appeared. Luo Tianhe was dumbfounded when he saw the other 3 people besides the old man. Honestly, these 2 men were too handsome. They had the temperament of dragons and phoenixes among men. The woman was beautiful and alluring, and there was even a refreshing fragrance on her body. The next moment, Luo Tianhe took a breath. "Are they from the Yi family?" Luo Xiaobai's eyes lit up. She tilted her head and looked at the youngest one. "Zhang Xuanyu." "Ow!" Zhang Xuanyu let out a strange cry and wanted to flash out with a swish to Luo Xiaobai. However, before he left, he was pulled back by the woman with one hand. The woman said, "Zhang Xuanyu, you are a married man. Don't hook up with other girls casually." Zhang Xuanyu roared, "She is Luo Xiaobai. She is my teammate. She grew up with me. She is my family, my family." The man smiled and said, "We have to end this battle as soon as possible. In this way, we can let Yin Yin come back and marry this kid. In this way, everything will be complete." The corners of Luo Xiaobai's mouth twitched. She knew who these 2 people were. If they were not Yi Shiyin's parents, who could they be? She didn't know whether it was Zhang Xuanyu or this guy. However, this guy didn't seem to be weak now. His realm was not weaker than hers at all. Before they could acknowledge each other, they saw another flash in the void, and a plump figure seemed to have been thrown out. The guy was still holding the roasted eel in his hand and muttering, "Old man, I just stole a meal. Do you have to?" "Oh, you? Xiaobai? F***CK. Am I dreaming?" Zhang Xuanyu and Luo Xiaobai were also surprised. Lurenquang? Among the 5 of them, except for Xia Xiaochan, only Han Fei knew where he went. In the later battle, only Lurenquang knew. Who took him away? Also, Lurenquang didn't seem to know that there was a battle on the Scattered Stars Island. It was more like he was thrown here directly. "How?" Lurenquang shouted. "Am I liberated? I'm back. I've finished my apprenticeship." "Ha ha." Looking at Lurenquang's crazy look, Luo Xiaobai shouted in a low voice, "Idiot, get ready to fight." Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1440. At the moment the space shook, Han Fei had already sensed it. Of course, the Black Killer Snail King also sensed it. But what the Black Killer Snail King didn't understand was that except for the old man, who was a junior venerable, the others were all at the Half-King realm, and the younger ones were only at the peak level of the Sea Spirit realm. Those below the venerable level couldn't enter the king's eyes at all, so the Black Killer Snail King wasn't worried. He was just a junior venerable and couldn't affect the overall situation. When the last projection came, everything would be settled. Venerable. Han Fei was puzzled. Since when were there so many venerables? There were all kinds of battles in the past, but only a few venerables came out. In today's battle, a few from the Half-King realm came out. Of course, what really made Han Fei happy was that Luo Xiaobai and the others were back. He hadn't seen them for a long time and missed them very much. It was a pity that they could only meet after this battle. When Luo Xiaobai and the others quickly learned the cause and effect and had already rushed to the battlefield on the east coast of the Scattered Stars Island, above the sea far away. Clatter, a huge, battered ship floated out of the sea. Swish, 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 tens of thousands of people with faceless faces and wearing long black robes leaped into the air and charged towards the shoreline at full speed. A faceless man stood at the bow of the ship, looking at the sky. No one knew what he was looking at. Anyway, after the tens of thousands of faceless people rushed into the battlefield, the faceless man on the ship stretched out his hand and pointed at the sky as if he were disdainful. Immediately after that, the man stepped into the station and appeared next to a sea spirit state half-mermaid. He pressed casually and killed the sea demon. Han Fei didn't call him the faceless man of the Thug Academy, because Han Fei knew that Old Bai and Old Jiang knew that they had to pay attention to the Scattered Stars Island when something big happened. This was not Han Fei's backup plan. At this moment, with the participation of the faceless man, the battlefield was quickly divided, and the situation on the east coast of the Scattered Stars Island became one-sided. Humans had already fought their way out. On the west coast, the Zhang Xuanyu trio, Luo, Tianhe, the E couple, and the old servant grinned. The old servant grinned, revealing a creepy smile. In front of him, a fish covered in scales transformed into thousands of armor. The scales shook and swept in all directions, as if Han Fei was casting the million knife art. The east and west banks were getting stronger and stronger, causing some of the soldiers to draw closer to the north and south banks. This was the true time to fight head-on. On this day, Han Fei asked the Thousand-Star City, but no one came to help him. Anyone who survived this battle would immediately change their attitude towards the Thousand-Star City. Jing was in the void, quietly watching the battle. The military strength of both sides, together with the marine creatures, numbered in the tens of millions. This battle could indeed be called the Battle of the Golden Age. Jing frowned. The situation in the Yin-Yang sky was tense. Shouldn't Her Majesty send some people over to help? In fact, with the help of the water and wood tribes, the situation on the Scattered Stars Island would be enough to resist the sea demons. Bang! Han Fei punched the black killer snail, king away, and flashed back. Heavenly Awakening Divine Art. An extremely dazzling white pillar of light instantly enveloped the old turtle's body. Han Fei shouted, "Don't worry about the Empyrean waterfall. Guard the north and south banks." The old turtle asked in surprise, "Where's the star turtle?" Han Fei sneered in his heart, "Keep fishing with the star turtle as bait." At this moment, the bait is no longer good. Whether I can catch any fish or not depends on my luck. At this moment, Han Fei's ambition was already obvious. He pointed his sword at the king and wanted to suppress the Thousand Stars. Although he wasn't strong enough, his aura was strong enough. In front of so many people, the arrival of the Heavenly Awakening Divine Art was inevitable. Immediately, people from the Thousand-Star City, the Black Killer Snail King, and the 7 major sects secretly exclaimed, "Is this the Heavenly Awakening Divine Art? Huh? The Human King Tao?" The Chu sect venerable from the Thousand-Star City exclaimed, "Damn it! How can Han Fei's spirit gathering art reach the level of the Heavenly Awakening Divine Art?" Inside the Cloud Whale, Tang Yin chuckled. "Interesting. The Heavenly Awakening Divine Art seems to have been completely lost 70,000 years ago, right?" The Black Killer Snail King looked at Han Fei in shock. "Heavenly Awakening?" A big hole appeared in the void, and the last giant snail crawled out. The Black Killer Snail King roared, "You want to be the king of the Yin-Yang heaven? You're just a kid. You're too arrogant. You haven't even become a venerable yet. What's the point of knowing the Heavenly Awakening Divine Art? My new body is here. Let's see how the Scattered Stars Island can resist me." Wow, the Black Killer Snail King dropped dozens of balls of corrosive blood, and new clones were being condensed. There were a total of 13 clones, including 7 beginner venerables, 1 advanced venerable, and 1 half-king. This was the maximum power that the Black Killer Snail King could use. The 7 beginner venerable clones charged at the battlefield in all directions. The advanced venerable and the half-king super powerhouse charged at the Empyrean waterfall. The Black Killer Snail King, who was fighting with Han Fei, roared, "The half-king wants to destroy the Scattered Stars Island. Who can stop him?" Without saying a word, Han Fei clenched his fists, and a bloody light surged into the sky as he punched out. In the blink of an eye, The projection of the black killer snail king reached 100 kilometers into the central city. Suddenly, the void collapsed, and a brawny old man walked out of the shattered void. The man roared, "The Chu sect is still here. How can a fake king like you wreak havoc in the world?" The old man punched out and grabbed the black killer snail king's projection and the advanced venerable's projection with his fists. Old Monster Chu's voice also echoed above the scattered stars island, meaning that the sea demons were not allowed to invade the island. However, Han Fei's voice then came, "Old Monster Chu, how dare you fight outside the void? I'll kill every member of the Chu sect I see." Humph, ignorant kid. Old Monster Chu was full of disdain for Han Fei's warning. He punched out, but the 100-kilometer range was immediately covered by the void, and the dispersing energy couldn't really damage the scattered stars island. When Old Monster Chu attacked, 5 buzzing noises sounded, and 5 more venerables appeared out of thin air in the Thousand-Star City to stop the black killer snail king. Hua, hua, hua. Hundreds of explorers from the north and south coasts arrived. Someone yelled, "The big clans are concerned about the human world. We're here to help you kill the enemy." Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Son of AB *TCH, the big clans are all bastards. I fought half the battle, and now I want to pick the fruits. Who gave you the courage to do that?" The black killer snail king only saw Han Fei's gloomy face. All of a sudden, the rod in Han Fei's hand raised a 1,000-meter-tall wave. In Han Fei's eyes, a large array was opened, and thousands of dazzling arrows were shot out. Hiu, hiu, hiu. The 1,000-stream divine arrow array wasn't very powerful, but it was one of the best arrays for ranged attacks. For the black killer snail king, who temporarily maintained his power with the corrosive blood, all he needed to do was consume his power. Setting up arrays always consumed energy and spirit chi. Of course, it was the same for demonic chi. Now, Han Fei didn't lack that. However, it was impossible to trap a king with an array. Therefore, with a swish, Han Fei transformed into a thunder leopard and dashed behind the black killer snail king as fast as lightning. Huh! A giant ape rose from the ground, and Han Fei reached out and stopped the snail shell. Han Fei's body was instantly pierced with countless small holes. The black killer snail king roared, "I'm an ancient fierce snail. How can your flesh and blood resist me?" Han Fei grinned hideously. "I bet your shell is not as hard as my bones." Clank, clank, clank. Tens of millions of arrows were shot out, and massive demonic chi burst out of Han Fei's body from time to time. Bam, bam. Billions of demonic chi condensed in Han Fei's hands. He grinned and said, "Let me see how powerful your king projection is." Rumble. The void within 1,000 kilometers collapsed, and strange colors fell from the sky as if it were the end of the world. Under the explosion, Han Fei felt dizzy and his body was blown to pieces, but his golden bones, dazzling, were not damaged at all. "Come back." The fluorescent light spots in the illusionary shadow gathered at Han Fei, and the giant snail was wrapped in a dark green cocoon, as if it were being reborn. Han Fei certainly wouldn't give a chance. 2 masses of demonic chi appeared on the giant hands of the ape. "Oh, you want to be reborn? Have I ever been nice to you?" Lunatic. Rumble. The area within 1,000 kilometers exploded again. On the scattered stars island, in the surroundings, Han Fei's voice echoed, "Fish *T King, let's see how much essence blood you can replenish. Let's see whether your shell or my bones are harder." Rumble. After 5 consecutive explosions, the black killer snail king finally couldn't withstand such a desperate explosion. It was mainly because it was a gathering of energy. Han Fei was also using energy. In the sky, everyone saw a skeleton that was glowing with golden light appear. Swish! A holy pillar of light descended, and the golden light spots returned from all directions. Han Fei's flesh and blood that had been blown apart were rapidly reassembling at a speed visible to the naked eye. Seeing this, Luren Quang exclaimed, "Wow, Han Fei, what's going on?" Zhang Xuanyu was dumbfounded. Is this guy still a human? Even Luo Xiaobai was shocked. At this moment, the waterfall of demonic plants swept dozens of kilometers, but her heart was gloomy. Han Fei was ahead of everyone, after all. Han Fei suddenly disappeared from everyone's sight. On the south coast, above the void, two venerables were fighting. One of them was from the Mo family. As a half-king, Han Fei pinched the projection of the black killer snail king of the Mo family. This place is forbidden. Rumble, boom, boom. Suddenly, a red crack appeared in the sky. Another venerable died, and a rain of blood poured down. Because the body of the black killer snail king was not here, no matter how many times it died, there wouldn't be any weather change. Therefore, Han Fei killed the venerable of the Mo family. ***************** Han Fei, why did you slaughter the venerable of the human race? Han Fei, do you want to die? Old Monster Chu's voice exploded. Han Fei, you're bringing disaster to the human world. Han Fei's domineering and gloomy voice echoed in the sky. Do you really think I don't mean what I said? I used all my resources to fight the sea demons to the death. You big clans invaded halfway and haven't made any contributions. How dare you put on airs in front of me? Han Fei roared. Have you forgotten what I said? If you want people to come to the Scattered Stars Island, pay first and then enter the island. Your deaths are not to be regretted. Even without all of you, I can still win this battle. The third chapter. End of this chapter. Chapter 1441. Ordinary people couldn't see the battle between Han Fei and the Black Killer Snail King. However, the Venerables in the fierce battle could see it clearly. Han Fei, this lunatic, blew himself up into a skeleton. Anyone would have been horrified by such a brutal way of fighting. At this moment, Han Fei killed the Mo family's venerable without batting an eyelid. Old Monster Chu scolded, Han Fei, this is a war. Why do you say you're fighting for the foundation of the human race? There are many big clans here, and they can help you block a dozen venerables. Without the big clans of the Thousand-Star City, how can you resist the Sea Demon King? Han Fei sneered and said, You want to prove your value? Why don't your aristocratic families kill a few supremacies for me to see? Don't just talk. Also, the explorers of the big clans can't hide from my perception. If you can't kill 1,000 enemies, get the hell back to the Thousand-Star City. Han Fei stepped out and charged into the Empyrean waterfall, hiding in the shadows of the void. At this moment, Gue Sanqing had already escaped because of Han Fei's Heaven Awakening divine technique. At this moment, he was fighting a clone of the Black Killer Snail King in the void to the south of the Scattered Stars Island. Because the Star Tortoise was still making a breakthrough, it couldn't teleport and was drawn into the void too. Swish! When Han Fei stepped into this void, overwhelming power bombarded him from all directions. It turned out that all the venerables of the 10,000 Demon Valley, the 7 major sects, and the big clans were fighting here. The bottom of the Empyrean waterfall had been blasted open. Everybody wanted to go to the bottom of the abyss. Because nobody would give in, they fought fiercely. As soon as Han Fei came in, he felt that the power Tang Yin gave him was almost exhausted. In such a chaotic battle of venerables, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long before he was beaten back to his original state. As soon as Han Fei came in, he heard Old Monster Chu yell, Han Fei, the dispute between us is an internal affair of the human race. Now we should work together to kill the 10,000 Demon Valley. Han Fei didn't speak. He was thinking, why did Old Monster Chu come out? Judging from his current performance, Old Devil Chu should be the strongest in the Chu sect. Even Old Han, the Heavenly Sword Master, and his sky-severing finger had failed to take him down. Why would such a ruthless character come over to negotiate with him? Of course, Han Fei didn't think that Old Eccentric Chu was so kind. Han Fei could guess that either Old Monster Chu was here for the remains of the Cloud Whale at the bottom of the lake and was determined to get it, or Old Monster Chu wanted to gain some special improvements in such a complicated battle. Everything has a reason. People with high statuses would not enter the arena easily. Once he entered the arena, something would definitely happen. But no matter what his purpose was, Han Fei wouldn't let him succeed. Han Fei shouted, Okay, you want me to believe you? I'll kill all the projections of the black killer snail first, then I'll believe it. In fact, it's not impossible for you to divide the corpses at the bottom of the lake. But first, you have to let me see the sweetness in your actions. Otherwise, do you think I would believe you? Han Fei didn't continue to attack, but stepped to the star turtle's side and stood on its shell. The star turtle almost burst into tears of joy. He had felt that he was going to be torn apart many times, but he didn't. Now Han Fei was here. This guy was so fierce that he didn't look like a human at all. He was relieved. Han Fei didn't attack, but just stood calmly on the back of the star turtle. In his opinion, since Old Monster Chu took action, the frontline battlefield outside wouldn't be lost. Besides, he had used too much strength just now and needed to hold back a little. These big clans wanted to seize the credit. Since they wanted to seize the credit, the dozens of explorers who appeared at the end had to kill the enemies. At present, there was no shortage of venerables. The Scattered Stars Island was on par with the Sea Demons again in terms of the explorer level. As for the combat power of law enforcers, because the Faceless Man joined the battle, this level was actually barely enough. With the participation of the various forces, this unparalleled war had reached a temporary equilibrium. When would this balance of combat power be broken? Han Fei was paying attention all the time. This was the most important thing for him as the commander-in-chief. At this moment, Han Fei's face was cold. In the outside world, people were dying every moment. However, at this moment, Han Fei couldn't do anything. From the moment Old Monster Chu appeared, Han Fei's enemy was no longer just the Black Killer Snail King, but one more. There were already 12 venerables from the big clans, including Old Monster Chu. If he killed one of them, the Mo family would still have 11 venerables left. What a terrifying battle prowess. How could Han Fei not know? Therefore, now Han Fei wanted to exhaust these people and stall for time. If these people could really kill the Black Killer Snail King, it would be perfect. It was said that there were humans and sea demons, but in fact there were 3 forces. Not only did Han Fei know this, but the people from the big clans and the 7 major sects also knew this. Even the bottom-level officers on the island noticed it. Now, Han Fei was obviously going to push the big clans against everyone and threaten them to kill the enemy. 10 minutes later, seeing that there was still not much change in the battle, Han Fei shouted, "If the big clans can't kill the enemy within 10 minutes, don't blame me for doing it myself." Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Han Fei was definitely not lying. Although Han Fei's half-king strength was strange, his strength was real, without any exaggeration. The reason why Han Fei could wait was that he wanted to prove his loyalty. However, the venerables of the big clans knew that even if they gave him their loyalty, Han Fei wouldn't believe them. Therefore, it was equivalent to Han Fei forcing them to kill the enemy, or he would fight them together. Although Han Fei didn't have the strength to fight them together. However, did the people from the big clans dare to leave at this time? If one of them dared to leave, Han Fei would open the sky curtain and tell everyone on the Scattered Stars Island that someone from the big clans had run away. That scene, just imagining it, was horrifying. Han Fei was definitely capable of doing that. Over the years, Han Fei's background had been dug out by everyone. Even the fact that Han Fei looked for swallowed spirit soup everywhere in the village had been recorded. This was the ability of the big clans. It was because of this that they knew what kind of person Han Fei was. In their investigation, Han Fei was simply a selfish person. Millions of soldiers? Would this guy care about them? He was just joking. This guy probably didn't care at all. Shueishenshi had never fought such a big war in his more than 50 years on the throne. Damn, Han Fei had been on the throne for less than 50 days, and a full-scale war had already broken out between human beings and sea demons. Also, why did this guy open the sky curtain and perform in front of millions of soldiers every now and then? He had long been used to showing his face in front of people and was shameless. In fact, although these big clans knew Han Fei very well. However, they also knew that throughout the history of the Scattered Stars Island, it seemed that every supreme commander had such a habit when they just took over the throne. This made them a little confused. Could it be that only such a character could be a commander? The Black Killer Snail King was not sure at this moment. The current situation didn't seem quite right. On the Scattered Stars Island, a strong master popped up one moment, and another the next. How many King strong masters had popped up already? Besides, Han Fei didn't have a good relationship with the big clans of the Thousand Star City at all. But even so, they still fought. This made him feel as if he had misunderstood something. The Black Killer Snail King had always felt that the power of the Scattered Stars Island was actually not that strong, even though he knew that the Thousand Star City was behind the Scattered Stars Island. However, he had made enough preparations for this. After all, 1,800 years ago, when Tang Yen was still alive, the Scattered Stars Island and the 10,000 Demon Valley both suffered heavy losses. A lot of strong masters were killed. The Black Killer Snail King thought that in just 1,800 years, how many strong masters could be born in the Scattered Stars Island and the Thousand Star City? Including the projection that had just been destroyed by Han Fei, he had a total of 3.5 king projections, but all of them were blocked at this moment. A peak-level Venerable was actually held up by an advanced Venerable. At this moment, he was also fighting fiercely and couldn't win. The advanced Venerable was even more depressed. One of them was killed by Han Fei with one hand. Another one was stopped by a decaying old man. The rest of the mediocre combat power were all blocked. It stood to reason that since Han Fei could be the commander of an island, he couldn't be a short-sighted person. At this moment, with the power of a half-king, as long as he killed one or two junior venerables, the balance of victory would tilt in favor of the human race. But Han Fei didn't make a move? The Black Killer Snail King had a bad feeling. Han Fei didn't make a move? What did it mean? It meant that he was still preserving his strength. He had already handed over the entire Saint Land and used up all his trump cards. Why would he still preserve his strength? Immediately, the Black Killer Snail King felt terrible. Does this mean that Han Fei is still guarding against his own people from the Thousand Star City? From this moment on, Han Fei no longer regarded himself as an opponent. When the Black Killer Snail King figured this out, it felt terrible. Han Fei looked as if he was going to defeat him. He had suffered such a huge loss, but he didn't even get to see the remains of the king. Immediately, the Black Killer Snail King set his eyes on Han Fei. No, to be precise, he set his eyes on the star Tortoise under Han Fei. As long as he could get the remains of the king, he could quickly seize the power of the king's corpse with his own ability. What's the big deal? Let's talk about it later. Let's get the corpse first to replenish my strength. This was the fundamental strategy to stay in an invincible position. Han Fei, the star tortoise, trembled all over and shouted. With a flip of his hand, the sky-hanging mirror appeared in Han Fei's hand, and the sky curtain unfolded, completely reflecting himself and the star tortoise on the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei's voice rippled. Under me, the star tortoise has suppressed the remains of the king and made great contributions to mankind. The big clans want to prove themselves. Are you really fighting for mankind? Then kill the Black Killer Snail King in front of me, in front of millions of soldiers. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1442. At the moment when the sky curtain bloomed, the people of the big clans were so furious that they wanted to tear Han Fei apart. This guy was sitting on the star tortoise's body, suppressing the seal and not moving out of the way, yet he was openly broadcasting to millions of soldiers. At this time, if the Black Snail King got close and forced Han Fei to take action, the big clans would lose all their face. Ordinary people didn't know the reason at all. They only knew that the big clans were unwilling to help, and General Han had to force them to do something. Of course, a lot of people would feel unbalanced. They were fighting on the front line and almost died. Okay, the people of the big clans kept saying that they were doing this for mankind, but they couldn't even kill a venerable? How could they be doing this for mankind? On the front-line battlefield, Zhang Xuanyu's attack soared into the sky, cracked the void, and pierced through 3 half-mermaids. After a round of attacks, Zhang Xuanyu was already covered in blood, looking extremely ferocious. Sky Swallowing Technique. Liu Renquang's Sky Swallowing Technique was even more ferocious. Almost all the sea demons within 100 meters could not escape. Even if there was a beginner explorer, he would not be able to escape. But as soon as Lu Rinquang activated his violent war body, the big shield roared, and Lu Rinquang dragged the explorer down. He slashed the explorer with the 4 extreme thunder-rushing saber. Luo Xiaobai was good at group battles and didn't target the strong. Anyone below the sea spirit level was her target. There were no survivors in the area covered by her demon plants. It could be said that each of these fellows possessed the strength to fight beyond their level and kill explorers. However, Han Fei already had this kind of strength when he came out of the Ideal Palace. Therefore, when others were surprised by the terrifying strength of these people, the 3 of them looked at the sky curtained from time to time. Zhang Xuanyu said, "I thought that I had grown fast enough in the past few years and could already compete with Han Fei. But, alas, is this guy growing fast even when he is sleeping?" While stirring the storm of knives and swords, the fat on Lu Rinquang's face shook, and he said, "I know. I heard that there's a kind of Tao called time. People who enter this Tao can change the length of time. If he cultivates for 2 days, only 1 day will pass normally." Luo Xiaobai said, "Stop guessing. After we win this battle, we can just ask." Although Luo Xiaobai envied Han Fei verbally, she only felt pressure in her heart. They told themselves that they had to catch up with him. They couldn't let Han Fei take the lead. However, the other people had different thoughts. They felt that Marshal Han was too domineering. This kind of aggressiveness made Han Fei look extremely domineering. Others might not like it, but the millions of soldiers of the Scattered Stars Island liked it. They had been fighting for so many years. Although it was for their own growth, it was more for the sake of humanity. This was the idea that they had been instilled the moment they stepped onto the Scattered Stars Island. So, they had the same idea as Han Fei. Your big family has participated in the war, but you haven't made any contributions? That was the problem. It's fine if you haven't done anything. And you're telling the millions of soldiers of the Scattered Stars Island that you're dedicated to mankind? Who the F***CK cares about you when you're painting a picture and putting on a show for so many people? They weren't fools. Why did the million soldiers obey Han Fei? Because Han Fei had been benefiting the Scattered Stars Island. Besides, Han Fei had killed a venerable for real. Today alone, he had slaughtered several venerables. Many of them also thought that Igaras, who was killed by Gue Sanqing, was killed by Han Fei. Because it was Han Fei who spoke at that time. Wasn't such an achievement enough to prove Han Fei's strength? In contrast, the big families were just there to watch the show. They had no sense of existence. Looking at the picture on the sky screen, many people in the battle cursed. Some people were ordinary people from the Thousand Star City and had a very bad impression of the big families. One person said, "Humph, they're just a bunch of guys who enjoy the fruits of others' labor. If it weren't for Marshal Han, would these people have taken action?" Someone said disdainfully, "Do you think they took action? Did you see the strange phenomenon in the heavens and earth today? Weren't they all killed by Marshal Han? These aristocratic families were completely useless. I even suspect that they're on the same side as the sea demons." Someone sneered, "Son of a b****. Some people only knew how to move their lips and talk like they were singing. The aristocratic families are all cowards, afraid of death." Han Fei was silently counting, quietly watching the performance of the big families. None of the venerables of the 7 major sects spoke. Han Fei and the big families were enemies, and the 7 major sects didn't want to get involved in this mess. Swish! Sword waterfall. He thought that was Jian Sanqing, who was already enraged. At this moment, his natal sword burst out, and the swords fell like a tide, like a waterfall, directly smashing an opponent's mid-level venerable. Seeing this scene, Han Fei suddenly stepped out. In one step, he flashed 1,000 kilometers and shouted, "Forbidden technique here!" Han Fei sealed the forbidden technique here, and, on the other side, dozens of energy fruits were thrown at Jian Sanqing. Jian Sanqing's eyes lit up, and the sword waterfall tore thousands of tiny cracks, strangling a large amount of the sea demon venerable's flesh and blood. Han Fei scanned with his yin-yang divine eyes, and almost at the same time as the old turtle, he found the sea demon venerable hiding in a wisp of soul fragment. He clenched his fingers and swatted the sea demon venerable at Jian Sanqing like a fly. The latter was overjoyed and shouted, "Sword King's soul breaker!" Crack, rumble, at that moment. A red crack appeared in the sky again, and a rain of blood poured down, sprinkling all over the scattered stars island. Han Fei turned around and looked at Ye Kai, who seemed to have been hit but quickly appeared in front of the star turtle. He immediately sneered. "How dare you? Who do you think you are? How dare you compete for the king's corpse?" Ye Kai didn't expect that Han Fei would come back even faster. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei was back. At that moment, Ye Kai didn't hesitate to use the star teleportation technique and ran away. However, Han Fei used the star teleportation technique and was even faster than Ye Kai, directly blocking his way. In an instant, irregular gravity descended, and Han Fei reached out and clenched. Bam! Ye Kai, a mid-level venerable, was crushed, and the void lines crazily absorbed Ye Kai's vitality. The old turtle's black mist seeped in. In the end, Han Fei added, "Forbidden technique here. Rumble." Ye Kai rushed at the star turtle and died in an instant. The sky rumbled once more, and the red crack in the sky caused everyone's hearts to tremble. 2 venerables died in a row. How many freaking venerables are there already today? Countless people exclaimed, "This battle of the strong is really terrifying." When one died, the world would be shaken like this. But this kind of power made countless people yearn for it. Han Fei shouted, "Congratulations, venerable of the heavenly sword sect from the Thousand Star City. You killed a sea demon venerable." After a pause, Han Fei continued, "I also killed one, by the way. How dare you try to touch the corpse of a king of the Scattered Stars Island? Why didn't you die? Well done. Marshal Han is invincible. The Heavenly Sword Sect is indeed the leader of the 7 major sects. Those people from the big clans should know that the 7 major sects can kill a venerable. But you can't." Many people from the big clans were speechless when they heard this. Who the hell do you think a venerable is? A venerable that can be killed casually? Who would dare to say that they could easily kill a supremacy who had lived for 5,000 years? Unfortunately, the millions of soldiers of the Scattered Stars Island don't understand. Anyway, if I can do it, so can the 7 major sections. Why can't the big clans do it? In the void, Han Fei was still standing quietly on the star tortoise. With Ye Kai's death, his position was replaced by Jian Sanqing. It was done perfectly, not delayed in the slightest. Ye Kai might have forgotten that Han Fei also knew the heavenly void divine walking technique that the Yi family was proud of. Han Fei also knew the star teleportation technique. At this moment, Han Fei was half a king. How could he kill an intermediate venerable? Wouldn't that be great? The Black Killer Snail King was dumbfounded. Did Han Fei hit his head by an ironhead fish? He still killed the venerable of his family? This guy was simply a killer. And the people from the big clans, except for Old Monster Chu, were all terrified. They were angry but didn't dare to say anything. Ye Kai was just testing Han Fei. He was killed by Han Fei in the blink of an eye? How could this be? However, they couldn't say anything. Ye Kai dared to take action because he was fast, so he wasn't afraid that others could see him. However, he seemed to have forgotten Han Fei's temper. "I'm already giving you face by letting you stay. I gave you a military order to stop the enemy. Why are you doing this to me? Aren't you courting death?" Even the millions of soldiers of the Scattered Stars Island saw this and knew about it. Han Fei still killed them without hesitation. Messing up the battle and not listening to the command. Wasn't this a name that could be casually deducted? However, after this attack, Han Fei also sighed secretly. The remaining power in his demonic essence was completely not enough for him to attack again. If he attacked again, his power would be exhausted, and he would have to use his own power again to return to the combat power of a beginner venerable. Even if he was the strongest, he could barely fight an intermediate venerable. At this moment, Han Fei certainly couldn't ask Tang Yen for power. Would Tang Yen give it to him? That was a problem. After all, judging from the current situation, the Scattered Stars Island seemed to have no chance of losing. Besides, even if Tang Yen gave it to him, It was a critical moment for the star turtle to make a breakthrough. It was not appropriate for him to leave. Tang Yin was even less likely to come. Otherwise, the secret that he had hidden for so many years would be exposed, wouldn't it? At this moment, Han Fei snorted softly and his voice spread in the air. It's been 5 minutes, and I haven't seen anyone from the big clans kill a venerable. Old Monster Chew, right? I know very well how powerful a half-king is. Back then, you wanted to intercept me and fight against several venerables alone? What? You can't even kill a venerable today? Han Fei raised his eyebrows at those people and said lightly, 10, 9, 8. In an instant, Old Monster Chew and the venerables of the big clans turned serious. Han Fei was serious from the very beginning. The Black Killer Snail King's heart tightened. These people from the Thousand-Star City must have a deep grudge against Han Fei. Would they really make a move? The Black Killer Snail King thought, I can hold on for another 5 minutes. If the big clans attack, then I have to escape. If the big clans don't attack, then there seems to be a chance. Second, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1443. The Black Hell Spiral King knew that his plan had failed. If the big clans of the Thousand-Star City joined hands with this kid Han Fei, how could he sweep the Scattered Stars Island and snatch the king's corpse? That was almost impossible. Therefore, the Black Hell Spiral King spoke to the venerables of the Thousand-Star City telepathically. Everyone, I only want the king's corpse. However, you have to be careful of this kid Han Fei. Why don't you join hands with the half-king to kill this kid first, and then get the king's corpse? What do you think? The big clans were tempted by the Black Hell Spiral King's words. Even though many venerables had died one after another, the overall strength of the Black Hell Spiral King's side was still extremely strong. Similarly, the strength of the Thousand-Star City was also extremely strong. Even though there were only 10 venerables left here, they were still more than all the venerables of the 7 major sects and the Scattered Stars Island combined. However, Old Monster Chew clearly knew that the Thug Academy hadn't appeared yet. The appearance of the faceless man alone was meaningless. The Thug Patriarch, Ren Tianfei, Han Guanshu, these people were the real trouble. In the eyes of the strong, the Scattered Stars Island seemed to be lacking in power. However, were there really few strong masters in the entire Thousand-Star City or the entire Yin-Yang Heaven? Old Monster Chew probably knew where Han Guanshu had gone. However, where did Ren Tianfei and the Thug Patriarch go? He really didn't know. Although the Thug Patriarch had turned to the undead and appeared a few years ago, he was only an intermediate venerable. However, from the battle a few years ago, it could be seen that the way the Thug Patriarch grew up was quite strange. He seemed to have embarked on an evil path, so he grew up extremely fast. There was also Ren Tianfei, whose strength was the most uncertain. Sometimes it was said that he was only an advanced venerable. Sometimes it was thought that he was at the peak. Sometimes it was thought that he had the power of a half-king. Not only was this person's strength a mystery, but so was his origin. From beginning to end, no one knew. What if they attacked Han Fei now? The two of them would definitely come out. The other people from the Thug Academy weren't difficult to deal with. However, the 2 junior venerables could all be taken care of. The 7 major sects didn't panic. Old Monster Chew thought for a while. In terms of strength, if he really joined hands with the Black Killer Snail, Han Fei might not be a match for him. However, the price of doing so was to destroy 1 million humans on the Scattered Stars Island at the same time. After killing Han Fei, the family still had to fight for the king's body with the Black Killer Snail King. It did not seem worthwhile to fight to the end. Han Fei and the others had annihilated them, but it would be difficult for the big families to make it to the end. The slightest bit of carelessness would cause him to be condemned by the masses and spurned by all living beings. Buzz, Old Monster Chew lashed out. A pitch-black, giant hand locked the void and grabbed the projection of the Black Killer Snail King. Terrifying and pure energy burst out like surging waves. Bang! With a loud explosion, another projection of the Black Killer Snail was destroyed. Han Fei watched all this expressionlessly. He's only killing a high-rank venerable's projection. Is this what a half-king realm powerhouse should achieve? Old Monster Chew, are you trying to fool me with this? When he had just obtained the power of half a king, he had easily killed Ziyu Chuan with a single blow. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, on the other side, Chao Shuang of the Chao family punched out like thunder and a dragon. All of a sudden, she seemed to have drained some of her strength and punched out from the void to the real world. The sea demon venerable in the fierce battle was directly shattered. Boom! Activating the swallowing technique, Chao Shuang swallowed a large amount of the sea demon venerable's energy. Even the shattered blood and corpse were swallowed by him as energy. But this time, Han Fei didn't help him. But Chao Shuang didn't want Han Fei to help either. A tentacle stretched out from between his eyebrows. Buzz! Thousands of electric currents exploded through the void within 1,000 kilometers. A figure was blown out when it was only half condensed. Chao Shuang took out a bead. She threw it out, and a big black hole-like hole appeared in the void. Puff! The sea demon venerable was sucked into the pure black cave halfway through its blood rebirth. Rumble in the sky, a streak of blood ran through, and a rain of blood exploded again. The millions of soldiers on the Scattered Stars Island had been used to the continuous rain of blood. Han Fei had said that this was a peerless battle. There had never been such a battle in the past 10,000 years. Most people also understood that what was really difficult to fight was not the battle on the front line. On the frontline battlefield, the enemies were evenly matched. Both sides still needed to rely on numbers, cooperation, battle formations, and commands to fight. However, at the level of explorer, they didn't need to rely on these. At this level, they were all existences that could penetrate the void. Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. Sure enough, the big clans still bullied the weak and feared the strong. It stood to reason that his side, at least on the surface, was definitely the weakest of the three parties. Even if Old Han, the thug patriarch, and Rin Tianfei were there, if Old Monster Chu and the Black Killer Snail joined forces, the odds of his side winning were still not high. Even if they really fought with all their might, they could at most barely win. Did they want to completely annihilate the big clans? That was obviously still a bit unlikely. But Old Monster Chu didn't choose to attack him. At that time, Han Fei knew that he had made the right bet. But in this way, Han Fei began to worry again. The combat power on his side was too little. If Jing didn't use it, then in the battle for the king's corpse, his side might still be at a disadvantage. Wait. Han Fei suddenly thought of something. The king's corpse? Yes. Han Fei suddenly realized something. The king's corpse, the king's corpse. If these people wanted the king's corpse, then let them. It had nothing to do with him. Han Fei immediately shouted, "Among the big clans, is the Chao family the only tough one? Old Monster Chu, do you think I don't know how strong a half-king's corpse is? Are you proud of yourself for killing an advanced venerable? Are the others pretending to be fighting?" Yang Kuan of the Yang family roared, "Han Fei, we are fighting here. What are you doing?" Han Fei immediately roared back, "Are you qualified to ask me that? At least a few venerables have been killed by me. Who do you think you are? Have you ever killed a venerable?" Stopping Yang Kuan, Han Fei said casually, "I know you want the king's corpse. You want it? Then I'll give it to you. I don't believe that a corpse can create a king. I, Han Fei, am going to become a king. I don't care about the king's corpse. You want the king's corpse, don't you? As the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island, I can give you a rule. Whoever kills more enemies will get more king's corpses. Whoever kills fewer enemies will get nothing." Seeing everyone's surprise, Han Fei sneered. "I always keep my word. If I don't even have this bit of tolerance, how can I become a king? Well, of course, I'm talking about the Explorer realm, the Law Enforcer realm, and the Hidden Fisher realm as a comprehensive judgment." The Yang family's eyes lit up. "Han Fei, are you serious?" Han Fei sneered. "Why would I lie to you? The big clans are not more difficult to deal with than the sea demons. I can swear to the Tao, provided that you kill the enemy first. Before the big clans and the 7 major sects did anything, the Black Killer Snail intended to withdraw from the battle first. There was no longer any meaning in such a war. Judging from the current combat power, all the trump cards on his side had been revealed, although there were still channels that could extend out of the Wall of Death. However, if they took the channels, they would have to pay a high price. Even if they had to use those channels, at least some of them had to escape. As soon as the Black Killer Snail King retreated, the remaining sea demon venerables tacitly began to retreat. The sky-hanging mirror in Han Fei's hand turned over and shone, accurately hitting the scene where the venerables were retreating. Han Fei roared, and his voice spread throughout the scattered stars island. All soldiers, the Black Killer Snail King has been defeated, and the sea demon venerables have begun to escape. Everyone, this eternal war shall end on this day. Follow me and kill. Clatter. At that moment, the entire scattered stars island was seething. Someone had just been replaced and was ready to take a break before going to the battlefield. As soon as he saw the scene on the Empyrean waterfall, he roared, "We're winning. We're going to win. Kill." Someone was overjoyed and crazed. Ha ha! I can't believe this day will come for the sea demons. Swish, swish, since they had fled, it meant that the Black Killer Snail King had made this decision after much deliberation. The Black Killer Snail King also knew that after this battle, the strength of the 10,000 Demon Valley would plummet. However, he had to leave. If he left, at least he could retain some combat power. If he didn't, he would be waiting for death. It wasn't until this moment that the Black Killer Snail King discovered that neither the Scattered Stars Island led by Han Fei nor the big clans that represented the strongest combat power of the Thousand Star City had ever regarded him as their ultimate opponent. The Black Killer Snail King did not feel good at all. He, a king, had been played? It was ridiculous that he had always believed that the sea demon army he led was the strongest. Retreat. The Black Killer Snail King's voice reverberated throughout the world. The sea demon army, which had long been defeated, ran out as soon as it heard the order to retreat. Han Fei's voice followed closely. Everyone, chase the enemy for 10,000 kilometers, kill. At 7 o'clock tonight, the Writer's Assistant app will be live-streamed for the authors. However, those who are interested can come and watch it. End of this chapter. Chapter 1444. At this moment, Han Fei looked down at everyone as a half-king. After all, Han Fei had killed several venerables in a row in a short period of time. There was no room for doubt in their hearts for such strength. In fact, many venerables thought that this power must have been left to Han Fei by Han Guanshu, Ren Tianfei, or someone else. Because Han Fei's strength had reached the half-king level and he was extremely domineering, no one dared to snatch the channel under the star turtle that Han Fei guarded. Suddenly, in this life-or-death chase, Old Monster Chu took action. The sky-covering big hand crossed the void and smashed 3 primary-level venerable projections of the Black Demon Snail King into pieces. However, this action let the Black Demon Snail King's half-king body go free. Seeing Old Monster Chu's reaction, the others also took action. Some stalled the enemies and waited for their allies to join forces to attack. Then, they killed the sea demons with arrays and other means. But even though they did everything they could, they only killed 2 of the Black Demon Snail King's projections. Why were these projections killed? Han Fei even suspected that they were left by the Black Demon Snail King to cover the retreat. Compared to the real primary-level venerables, projections were just special energy. They were energy which would be consumed and couldn't be used for cultivation. Therefore, the value of projections wasn't very high. Even though the battle was one-sided, the following chase lasted for more than 4 hours. Seeing that the opponent's venerables were less injured, Han Fei had a vague understanding. It seemed that the stronger one was, the smaller the gap between them was. There were very few people like Han Fei who could challenge those at a higher level than him. Of course, he couldn't say that there was no gap between him and the others. After all, he was a heavenly talent, so he had to be stronger. However, at the venerable level, the gap between ordinary people and the top heavenly talents was no longer very obvious. Han Fei thought, I'm afraid it has something to do with the fact that the former heavenly talents didn't have good techniques. Otherwise, shouldn't the heavenly talents be proud of their peers? In the weak stage, talents could play an important role. However, at the venerable level, the development of talents had almost reached its limit. After that, without top techniques, the former heavenly talents would become ordinary people. In fact, Han Fei didn't think he was completely fine. Just now, the power that Tang Yin had given him was unparalleled. However, when facing the Black Killer Snail King, he did not seem to be more powerful than the others, given his talent. Of course, it could also be because it wasn't his own power, so he couldn't fully tap into his own potential. All in all, Han Fei was secretly relieved. He had won the battle. Together with the half-king projection of the Black Killer Snail, a total of 6 Sea Demon Venerables ran out. It seemed like they had killed many supremacies in this battle. However, apart from the 2 Venerables from the Thousand Star City, most of the Sea Demons were killed by the projections of the Black Killer Snail. It could only be said that this unparalleled battle had only foiled the Black Killer Snail's conspiracy. When the enemy's venerable power completely escaped, Han Fei's voice shook the scattered stars island. The Sea Demons have been defeated. Experts, kill the Tao-seeking level Sea Demons quickly. Then, Han Fei shouted again, there are millions of people on the Scattered Stars Island. The Scattered Stars Island is about to usher in 1,000 years of prosperity. The Sea Demons were defeated, and humans were on a rise. From now on, this vast sea belongs to the human race. There is no Myriad Demon Valley anymore. Only the Scattered Stars Island. Roar. Kill. Did we win? Did we finally win? Brothers, after this battle, there will be no more wars. F***CK. General Han is so powerful, little fish don't run. Let me kill 2 more of them. As the saying went, a defeated army was like a landslide. The escape of the top experts, such as the Black Killer Snail King, made the Sea Demon army completely lose confidence. Even their king had run away. How could they take down the Scattered Stars Island? In fact, the Black Killer Snail King couldn't take them away. After all, an army of millions was not a small number. Above the vast sea, there was a fierce battle. The Sea Demons that couldn't run away were being wiped out. Although the battle had only lasted for 2 hours, the 300 kilometers from the coast to the Scattered Stars Island had almost been destroyed. More than 1 million Sea Demons and soldiers of the Scattered Stars Island had died. Han Fei couldn't bear to watch the tragedy of this battle. He didn't want to see the sacrifice of these people. He wanted to purge more Sea Demons. Crack. 50 seconds after the battle was won, the Star Tortoise made another breakthrough, steadily advancing from a junior venerable to a mid-level venerable. Rumble, the Empyrean waterfall had already collapsed, and the rock wall below the Star Tortoise had been completely shattered. In an instant, everyone's gazes swept over to this side. Han Fei said to all the venerables of the 7 major sects and the major families, "You want the body of King? See you in the 10,000 Demon Valley." Crack, crack, crack. Holding Snowmorn, Han Fei cut open the 300 kilometers around the Star Tortoise. The seal had been broken, and Han Fei carried the 300 kilometers of the Star Tortoise and ran in the sky. The Star Tortoise had just made a breakthrough. Although the seal had mostly been opened and the power of the Great Path was surging out, it hadn't been fully unlocked yet. It was following Han Fei closely. This scene was reflected in the sky. Countless people who were chasing him were dumbfounded. Was he still a human being? Someone asked solemnly. What is Commander Han doing? Why is he carrying a mountain? Someone exclaimed. He's carrying a mountain on his own. That's so awesome. Someone complained. Damn it, did you see that it's a mountain? It's clearly an island that Commander Han is carrying on his shoulder. Someone rolled his eyes. Cut out. Open your eyes and see which shoulder Commander Han is carrying it on. Someone exclaimed, Look, is that turtle the one who said he was going to become a venerable? Yes, that's him. I saw him when the sky swept past the Empyrean waterfall just now. Lu Renquang's face shivered. Where's he going? Luo Xiaobai said solemnly. If he wins the battle, Han Fei will definitely take credit for himself. However, he hasn't, which means that the battle isn't over yet. Bam! Bam! The void exploded, and Luo Tianhe appeared and landed before them. Don't chase him where he's going. For those below the Venerable Realm, the battle is basically over. However, for those above the Venerable Realm, the second battle has just begun. Zhang Xuanyu exclaimed, The second battle? What second battle? Luo Tianhe said, the big clans and all the forces on Han Fei's side don't agree with each other after all. Do you really think that Han Fei asked the people of the Thousand Star City to come down to ask them for help? Hiss, all of a sudden, everyone was horrified. What do you mean by that? How could the Scattered Stars Island and the 7 major sects win such a battle? Even so, it wouldn't work, right? Although the big clans didn't make any contributions, they at least stopped some enemies. Luo Xiaobai was the first to react. The Thousand Star City didn't really want to stop the sea demons, so Han Fei doesn't owe them. The two sides have different purposes to resist the sea demons, but they both have the same premise, which is to exclude the sea demons, so they barely reached an agreement. At this time, the United Front has passed. Is there still a battle between Han Fei and the big clans of the Thousand Star City? Luo Tianhe shrugged slightly. To fight or not to fight? I don't know. No one knows whether they will fight or not. The Thug Academy didn't show up from the beginning to the end. Less than half of the Grandmasters of the Thousand Star City came. There are more people, especially those who are not on the surface, who didn't show up at all. Lu Renquang couldn't help scratching his head. So, in fact, neither side has ever regarded the sea demons as a real enemy, right? Luo Tianhe nodded slightly. It's not that the Thousand Star City doesn't know about the sea demons. It's just that, in their opinion, this is not a big problem. In their eyes, the Scattered Stars Island is more like a training ground, not a real place of death. Luo Xiaobai frowned. Where's he going now? Luo Tianhe looked at Han Fei, who disappeared into the sky, and said lightly, the 10,000 Demon Valley. At the moment when the Scattered Stars Island won the battle, the 10,000 Demon Valley had been fighting for nearly 4 hours. It could be said that the army of 800,000 had attacked, and the allied forces of humans and underground cities, which originally numbered more than 40,000, had been reduced to less than 20,000. However, the situation was different from the battle on the Scattered Stars Island. The combat power of the 10,000 Demon Valley was far higher than that of the Scattered Stars Island. Here, the weakest was a peak-level hidden fisher. The team with the worst aptitude was the team of He Xiaoyu, who was accidentally left behind. Even such a team, because of Jiu Yinling's care, was intact. The combat power of humans and the underground city army was extremely fierce. In this battle, more than 200,000 sea demons were killed. After all, most sea demons were still too weak. They hadn't even reached the sea demon realm, so they could only be slaughtered. However, the corrosive blood in the bodies of these dead sea demons was continuously absorbed into the void, becoming nourishment for the Black Killer Snail King. If it weren't for these lives supporting the Black Killer Snail King, it would have been crushed by Han Guanshu at this moment. Shueishenqi fell into the same vicious circle as Han Guanshu. Because the projection of the Black Killer Snail King was constantly replenished by the corrosive blood, it couldn't be defeated no matter how hard it fought. Of course, the Black Killer Snail King consumed the lives of its 800,000 half-mermaids. This was also the reason why the allied forces of more than 40,000 could kill 200,000 sea demons in a row in 4 hours. Suddenly, their hearts did a flip. Han Guanshu grinned. Oh, we were defeated? The Black Killer Snail King's face became extremely ugly. The sea demon army was defeated after all. It wanted to fight against the entire human race with only a part of its strength. Obviously, it was still a bit powerless. The Black Killer Snail King roared. So what? Even if I'm defeated, the remaining 2 projections of the half-mermaids aren't something that the Scattered Stars Island can easily deal with. However, Han Guanshu suddenly smiled and said, Do you really think you can leave? On the Book of Tao in Han Guanshu's hand, the lightning of the 9th heaven poured out and shook the world. Lightning Deity, slaying array. A tremendous amount of lightning blocked the void. A big skeletal hand stretched out of the void and grabbed at the hundreds of thousands of sea demons. Boom! The shocking fist mark pierced through the sky and the earth, like a big star exploding, and the galaxy trembled. The terrifying and domineering power rushed straight at the Black Killer Snail King from above. Bam! 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 tens of thousands of half-mermaids suddenly collapsed, and their corrosive blood quickly flew towards the Black Killer Snail King. The Black Killer Snail King turned its hand, and a sun-moon shell in its body exploded. A large amount of corrosive blood enveloped it, trying to block Han Guanshu and the terrifying fist mark. Chi! 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 However, the corrosive blood from the outside world couldn't break into the lightning deity slaying array at all. More than half of the corrosive blood in the Black Killer Snail King's body was evaporated by the punch. Ren Tianfei's figure appeared, and the fist mark was launched again. The Book of Tao shone again. A big skeletal hand pierced straight into the Black Killer Snail King with its hand as a knife, leaving no chance for the Black Killer Snail King to survive. Puff! Hum! The Black Killer Snail King's body exploded, and this projection was destroyed. Chapter 1445. Little did the Black Hell Snail King know that the real big shot wasn't on the Scattered Stars Island at all. If someone else were here, such as Old Monster Chu's sect, he would definitely recognize them. Who else could they be but Ren Tianfei and the Thug Patriarch? White bones slapped down, and in an instant, tens of thousands of sea demons died. Although these tens of thousands of sea demons were the original existence of the sea demons from before, they were still the sea demons from before. However, in essence, they were no longer themselves. Their consciousness had been controlled by the Black Killer Snail King, and they could be considered as small clones of the Black Killer Snail King. The Thug Patriarch didn't kill these hundreds of thousands of half-mermaids. Perhaps it was just as the old tortoise said, you can kill, but you can't simply kill. It wasn't that he couldn't, but it was taboo. Usually, experts would disdain doing such a thing. The Thug Patriarch's intervention could only balance the battle between these juniors. Once the Black Killer Snail King's half-king projection was destroyed, the low-level venerable projection naturally had no chance of survival. The Thug Patriarch's bones disappeared in the void. In the end, he asked, "You didn't find me, did you?" Ren Tianfei's voice echoed, "Your aura is too unique. It's very likely that you've been discovered. I only threw 2 punches. They shouldn't have discovered me." Han Guanshu said, "Okay, there's still the projection of a half-king. Go back, don't lose your cards." Hum, hum, in the void, the Thug Patriarch and Han Guanshu disappeared as if they had never appeared. At this moment, Shueishenqi had no opponent. He looked at Han Guanshu and said, "I thought this battle would be very difficult. It should be very difficult for us to win since the big families are involved. Unexpectedly, you guys had a tacit understanding to destroy the Myriad Demon Valley first." Han Guanshu smiled. Although the big families didn't contribute, they did stop a lot of people. The credit was still there. However, this kind of contribution was not worth much. If it weren't for them, the Scattered Stars Island wouldn't have lost. Therefore, their contributions are meaningless. Shueishenqi asked, "Is there another battle today?" In the peerless battle between humans and sea demons, the sea demons were the first to lose. However, the aristocratic families would not let go this time. At the very least, the Chu men and the Chao family would not give up. If these 2 super clans didn't let go, the other clans wouldn't. In the first place, Han Fei didn't like the big families at all. Now that he was the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island, he certainly wouldn't give up. In Shueishenqi's opinion, the war between Han Fei's force and the Thousand Star City would not be much worse than the war between humans and sea demons. Currently, the only thing worth rejoicing about was that the battle between the 2 sides would only be a battle between peak combat powers. There wouldn't be any ordinary combat power involved. Since there were no casualties among the ordinary people, it was easy to deal with them. They fought until one side won and the other side lost. Take Shueishenqi, for example. Since he had already chosen a side, he would not waver. Compared to Han Fei and those from the big clans, Han Fei was young and could be molded. His talent, luck, and background were not weak. The aristocratic families were rotten to the core. The internal structure of the clan was too strict. A place like this might be able to mass-produce experts. But when it came to proclaiming himself king, Shueishenqi didn't believe it. To be honest, Shueishenqi believed Han Fei could win. After all, he had served as the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island for 50 years and knew the importance of the power of faith. This was a force that could promote Han Fei's rapid growth. The reason why he had been suppressing it until now was because of the agreement between him and Han Guanshu. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been a peak-level junior venerable now. He would have been at least a peak-level intermediate venerable or even an advanced venerable. At this moment, there were only about 500,000 sea demons left in the 10,000 Demon Valley. Although they still had the corrosive blood in their bodies, all the defeated sea demons were still not enough for the Black Killer Snail King to launch another battle of the century. If the Black Killer Snail King wanted to fight again, it would have to wait at least 100 years. In these 100 years, the sea demons would be dormant, and human beings would enter a period of rapid growth. At least, this was Xue Shenqi's opinion. In Han Fei's opinion, he only had one goal in the next few years. That was to overthrow the big clans and completely defeat these people. At this moment, Han Fei suddenly realized that he somehow understood a truth that he was very familiar with but didn't like most of the time. That was, those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will die. King. At this moment, Han Fei looked at the entire island, which was more than 200,000 kilometers long. For some reason, he wondered, what is a king? Benevolent people were kings, brave people were kings, muddle-headed people were kings, and violent people could also be kings. Han Fei was enlightened at that time. To be a king, it was not just about strength and realm, but also personal understanding. What was the sea expansion realm? Was it a space or a path to becoming a king? Unfortunately, Han Fei knew that his current strength was still weak. There was still a long way to go before he could gain a deeper understanding of the kings. As long as he was given time, he would definitely succeed. He didn't know about other things, but at the very least, he had to eradicate the aristocratic families. If he couldn't eliminate these people, he would never be a king in this life. Suddenly, Han Fei sensed that someone was coming. The big clans and the 7 major sects had all arrived. During this time, no venerables had died, which meant that none of them had caught up. The Star Tortoise said, Han Fei, what do we do now? Han Fei's power was already showing signs of instability. After all, it was borrowed and not owned by him. Many people in the big clans were paying attention to it. So, when Han Fei's strength began to be unstable, many people gathered around him. Han Fei scolded expressionlessly. What? Do you want the corpse of a king with such little combat power? Why don't I know how many enemies you've killed? Immediately, Old Monster Chu blocked Han Fei and sneered. Han Fei, I didn't care about you when the Sea Demon Army was here. Why? Do you really think you're big shot? Without your father, without Ren Tianfei, and without Immortal Li, you're just a kid. Before they reached the 10,000 Demon Valley, Old Monster Chu had already offended Han Fei. Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. He waved his hand casually and threw more than 300 kilometers of land into the waves. Bam, the waves surged and tsunamis rose. However, in the deep sea, it was not a big problem and had no impact on the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei sneered. Me? Old Monster Chu, what do you think? Now, the enemy hasn't been eliminated yet. How dare you offend me like this? You're very confident. The Star Tortoise was dumbfounded. The previous supreme commanders of the Scattered Stars Island all said that the people from the Thousand Star City were not good. The position of commander would never fall into the hands of the big clans. Every commander-in-chief had to go through many rounds of inspection and verification in secret to confirm that there were no problems before they could be selected. In the past, the Star Tortoise only thought that the people from the Thousand Star City were selfish and not very righteous. But now, it seemed that the situation was not right. They didn't just hate Han Fei. A war was about to break out. Old Monster Chu sneered. Han Guanshu, your son has been in the limelight. Now his power is about to be dispersed. Do you really dare to keep him with me? Me? Old Monster Chu, I've never seen you leave the Chu sect in the past 1,000 years. What's wrong? You don't want the Chu sect anymore? As he spoke, a golden path emerged. Han Guanshu came over leisurely with a scroll in his hand. Old Monster Chu's pupils constricted slightly. Was it his illusion? Han Guanshu seemed to be stronger than before. However, after being stuck in a half-king realm for a long time, old Monster Chu was no longer afraid of anyone. He believed that he was invincible as long as the king didn't come. Old Monster Chu said, "Where are Ren Tianfei and Immortal Li? Since you form an alliance, why don't you see them?" Han Guanshu smiled faintly. "What do you think?" Old Monster Chu snorted. "Since I'm here, I won't go back empty-handed. Show me the king's corpse." After hiding it for so long, the black killer snail king has been driven away. "Who are you waiting for if you don't show it now?" Han Fei sneered. "You want the king's corpse? Okay, the three families here can fight first and give me the king's corpse." At this moment, the mountain had been enveloped by the Tao. The spirit awakening fluid was seeping out. The pressure of the king's white mist had begun to show, and the power of the Tao was penetrating. The star tortoise couldn't be sealed anymore. Old Monster Chu looked at Han Guanshu. "Just now, I showed you some respect, but now you don't want it anymore?" Standing above the white mist, Han Fei sneered. "Old man, to tell you the truth, I will uproot the Chu sect. The people of the Chu sect have enjoyed the supreme glory for thousands of years. Let's see the filth and darkness of the bottom of this world. Since you've made it clear today, bring it on. Let me see how many trump cards the big families of the Thousand Star City have." Han Fei had always been tough. He could fight with his father. Why wouldn't he? If the other party was fair to him, then even if they were in the same realm, he could still fight alone. More importantly, the other party had to be willing. At this moment, Han Fei looked at the master of the heavenly sword with a smile and said, "Senior Sword Master, this is a choice. From tonight on, one of the big clans in the Thousand Star City or me will decline. Are the 7 major sects ready to bet?" Han Guanshu looked at his valiant son and thought to himself, "How much confidence do you have in us?" However, Han Guanshu wasn't panicked. He also wanted to challenge the real strength of the big families. The master of the heavenly sword looked at Han Fei with a smile and said in an old voice, "Who do you think I will choose?" Han Fei grinned. "You don't have a choice. Considering the nature of the big families, I'm afraid that you will be retaliated sooner or later. Why don't you follow me and overturn the big families?" The master of the heavenly sword smiled casually. How arrogant! In that case, this old man shall see just how many people both sides can call over today. Chapter 1446. Han Fei knew that from the very beginning, he was not alone. He had a lot of forces that he could rely on. However, these forces were different from those of the big clans. The big clans were fighting for their own ruling status and class interests. However, the forces around Han Fei were gathered together because of various coincidences. Perhaps they had been planning for a long time. However, the starting point of their gathering was different. It just so happened that Han Fei was pushed to this position. Now, although Han Fei still couldn't be regarded as the top combat power here. However, Han Fei had indeed changed from a chess piece to a player. The outbreak of a war involved the life and death of millions of people. How could Han Fei act recklessly? Not to mention that he hadn't become a venerable yet. Even if he was a venerable, he wouldn't act recklessly if he wasn't absolutely sure. Before planning this battle, when he returned to the 10,000 Demon Valley from the Saint Land, Han Fei had already made a plan. In the Saint Land, a large number of sea demons didn't have time to return until they died. Han Fei had seen the construction of the giant teleportation array. He could build one too, because the teleportation array he teleported was only the size of a few people. However, the army of sea demons that the other party was going to teleport was hundreds of thousands of people. Once the Scattered Stars Island succeeded, the Saint Land would inevitably become the reserve force of the 10,000 Demon Valley. In the Saint Land, there were tens of millions of snails. With the Black Killer Snail King's power, it was definitely not a problem for it to turn into a projection. Therefore, although the number of people who stopped the 10,000 Demon Valley was not large, they couldn't be weak. If it weren't for the fact that the Scattered Stars Island indeed had no high-end combat power, he would have arranged for Peaceful to go there. She was a half-king. If he didn't use her when he needed to, would he use her when he couldn't? In order to make this move of the 10,000 Demon Valley work, the Scattered Stars Island needed to have enough power to fight against the sea demons first. There weren't many known powers, and there weren't many people that could be used. Han Fei didn't expect that the people of the Thug Academy would come to help at the critical moment. That would very likely expose the trump card of the Thug Academy. But in the end, a ghost ship came, bringing tens of thousands of faceless people. At this moment, the war seemed to have ended, but a battlefield without smoke reignited, because Han Fei knew that this battle would inevitably come. The powerhouses of the major families in the Thousand Star City had racked their brains for thousands of years in order to become kings, but to no avail. Now, the corpse of a king was right in front of them, and you're telling them to endure? It was impossible. Even if it was for the sake of obtaining the great path of the corpse of a king, they would still choose to fight over it. Once he became a king, he could enter the immortal palace and rule the entire Yin-Yang sky. At that time, the sea demons wouldn't be a problem. Han Fei could keenly grasp the thinking of the big clans. In the past, Shiman Linglan had told him many things. In the minds of aristocratic families, their way of doing things was different from that of ordinary people. This had long been engraved in their bones. Even at this moment, Han Fei was still gambling. Han Fei didn't want old Han to have an ultimate battle with the big families either. But Han Fei still lured them here, because Han Fei concluded that the big families didn't have the courage to start a war. With his family's 1,000 years of luck, he wanted to fight against people like them who had no family background. Since it was a bet, the chips had to be sufficient. Otherwise, the other party would eat you in one bite like it was a game. What kind of gambling was that? Although Han Fei didn't have enough people, it didn't mean that he didn't have any chips. Just like old Monster Chu, although there were 10 venerables here, Han Fei wasn't afraid at all. Among the 10 venerables, even if old Han couldn't deal with them, Peaceful could deal with them. Even if Peaceful didn't take action, old Monster Chu could snatch the Cloud Whale. How could Tang Yin let him? At this moment, Han Fei looked at the Heavenly Sword Master. Seeing that the 7 major sects didn't take any action, he looked at Xue Shenqi. On the Scattered Stars Island, there were Xue Shenqi, Chun Sanbai, the Star Tortoise, and himself, who were equivalent to an advanced venerable. The mid-level Star Tortoise and the 2 peak-level beginner venerables were barely enough. They weren't enough in number, but the big families didn't have advanced venerables. Han Fei suddenly looked at the void in the distance and said lightly, "The Yi family has a disciple who joined the Thug Academy. As a senior, you're a bit far away. Alas, we don't have many people in our family. We can't lose all of them." An old voice sounded, and the old servant of the Yi family walked out from the void in the distance. Compared with the others, Han Fei was the least familiar with the Yi family. He didn't even know them at all. However, Han Fei and this family had one thing in common, which was that they weren't accepted by the big families in the Thousand Star City. The bloodline of the Yi family meant that they were destined to live a fugitive life. Therefore, the 2 sides were natural allies. If the Yi family helped Han Fei, they would also help themselves. This was also why they had to throw Yi Xian into the Thug Academy. In the blink of an eye, there were as many as 6 venerables on Han Fei's side. Among them, Han Guanshu's strength was uncertain. When Han Guanshu was fighting fiercely with the Black Killer Snail King's clone, others might not be able to notice it, but old Monster Chu could. Even if there were 4 more venerables on his side, there were 5 venerables from the 7 major sects here, especially the Heavenly Sword Master, who was at the peak of the advanced level but had the combat power of a peak-level venerable. His strength was no weaker than that of an ordinary peak-level venerable. His combat power immediately surpassed that of the big families. In fact, old Monster Chu found that the Thug Patriarch had appeared here and was probably still nearby. As for Ren Tianfei, he didn't find any trace of him. This person was best at sneak attacks, so he had to guard against him. Old Monster Chu looked at the Heavenly Sword sect. Heavenly Sword, if you choose sides today, your 7 major sects will be at war with the big families. It doesn't matter if they hide here and there. Your foundation is in the Thousand Star City. The Heavenly Sword Master smiled disdainfully. Old Monster Chu, You don't have to bluff me. If it were so easy for the 7 major sects to get into trouble, your big families would have taken over long ago. You hurt the enemy, but you hurt yourself. Don't tell me you don't understand this logic. If you have the ability, then completely suppress them. Don't blame the 7 major sects for nothing. Old Monster Chu sneered. Well, even if you really join forces, so what? It's nothing more than Ren Tianfei and the Thug Patriarch. These two can't be here. If my guess is right, one of them must guard the level 3 fishery, and the other must wander around the Thousand-Star City, trying to make trouble. Humph, Chao Tianji, are you still not coming out? The reason why Old Monster Chu dared to fight was that these two people would be restrained. Once the Thug Patriarch and Ren Tianfei appeared and were restrained, the big families would try their best to lock them outside the Scattered Stars Island and kill them together. Han Fei's eyelids twitched when he heard Old Monster Chu shout. Old Han also shouted this name in the battle in the Thousand-Star City. Today, it was Old Monster Chu who shouted it. Originally, Han Fei already felt a little strange that Chao Shuang from the Chao family was among the people who came to the Scattered Stars Island this time. Even the Chun family didn't come. Why did the Chao family, a super family on the same level as the Chu sect, send someone here? Since they had come, it meant that they had a purpose, and they also wanted the remains of a king. Han Fei thought that a family like the Chao family wouldn't believe in these ways to become kings. But now it seemed that this was not the case. Everyone, including Han Guanshu, raised their heads and looked at the void. After several breaths of time, they saw a tall and sturdy man walk out from the void with a cold and indifferent expression. The man glanced at Han Guanshu casually and then at Old Monster Chu. In the end, he fixed his eyes on Han Fei. Now that things have come to this, let's take a look at the remains of kings. Han Fei looked straight at this person. So what if I do? Chao Tianji said. If it's useful, the Chao family will only ask for a piece of bones and won't participate in this competition. Han Fei chuckled. Jackals are the same lair. The Chao family focuses on body tempering, and the king's great bone is the essence of your body. You just asked for a piece of bones without any effort? Aren't you more domineering than Old Monster Chu? Old Monster Chu laughed. Chao Tianji, Han Fei's words are quite right. You just asked for a piece of bones without doing anything? Is that right? Chao Tianji ignored Old Monster Chu and looked at Han Fei. The Chao family sent 3 masters to ask for a piece of King's great bone. Is there a problem? As soon as he said that, another figure walked out of the void. His fists were glowing, and he had silver hair. He looked quite intimidating. Seeing this, Han Fei was shocked again. This is 2F** King much. How many venerable realm experts do these aristocratic families have hidden? What? Another F** King high-grade venerable one? Han Fei's face changed for a long time before he said, You want to see the king's bone? Okay, now there are a few more families. You know the rules of the Scattered Stars Island. The resources that should be given have been given. This is one of the reasons. As I said before, whoever kills the most enemies will get the most. Seeing Han Fei give in, Old Monster Chu couldn't help but show a trace of disdain. However, he also secretly sighed. If it weren't for Chao Tianji, Han Fei wouldn't have given in. Many people thought that Han Fei just wanted the last bit of faith to find a way out of this embarrassing situation. The 7 major sects and the Heavenly Sword Master frowned slightly. Is Han Fei going to compromise just like this? But it makes sense. No matter how strong Han Guanshu was, his strength was limited. The big families would definitely send people to the level 3 fishery to disperse the venerables on Han Fei's side. Since Old Monster Chu dared to come to the Thousand-Star City, he must have made corresponding preparations. If Ren Tianfei didn't sneak attack the Thousand-Star City, but came here, there would definitely be other people coming. The consequence might be that they wouldn't be able to get away. The Heavenly Sword Master was thinking, even if I join the battle, the other party has one more demi-king. Han Fei's side is still not strong enough. As if making a major decision, Han Fei looked at the star tortoise. Open the array. The star tortoise trembled a little, and the thousands of seals on its body that looked like thousands of small hands began to shrink. Slowly, a cloud of white mist filled with the aura of a king appeared. Chao Tianji said lightly. It's the mist of Tao. It can't be seen from the outside. We have to go in. Han Fei immediately said, Go in? I'm the first one. Old Monster Chu frowned slightly. Humph, don't talk nonsense. Let's go in together. At this point, this old man doesn't want any unforeseen events to occur. Chao Tianji nodded. I have no objection. Han Guanshu looked at Han Fei. Son, what do you think? Han Fei said with a gloomy face. Okay. However, the 7 major sects have made great contributions in this battle. Let's go in together. The Heavenly Sword Master nodded slightly. Although he knew that Han Fei was looking for reinforcements, he also wanted to see the corpse of a king. Since Han Fei had called him, how could he refuse? At that moment, everybody walked into the mist of Tao, and Han Fei's eyes flashed. The last time he came here, there was no mist of Tao at all, only the mist barrier of the king's coercion. Chapter 1447. The moment he entered the mist of Tao, Han Fei knew that this was no longer the place he entered before. When he came in last time, the old turtle discussed with him why the power of Tao in the cloud whale's corpse seemed weak. Now, as soon as he entered, a terrifying king's pressure descended. Crack, crack, crack. Han Fei clearly felt that all the beginner venerables were having their flesh and blood torn and their bones broken. Han Fei, on the other hand, looked indifferent. It seemed that he had already adapted to the king's pressure, so it was not a big deal. However, although this pressure was strong, it was not enough to crush a venerable to death. After 3 breaths of time, a series of banging sounds could be heard. Old Monster Chu, Chao Tianji, Han Guanshu, Chao Meng, the master of the heavenly sword, and Han Fei passed through the mist of Tao almost at the same time. As a result, the moment they appeared behind the mist, they saw a man in a dark blue battle suit with a thin face and a hint of mockery on his face. He was carrying an irregularly shaped black iron long knife on his shoulder and looking at Old Monster Chu and the others with a faint smile. Yo, long time no see. When Old Monster Chu and Chao Tianji saw this person, their faces changed drastically. Tang Yin? Old Monster Chu immediately pushed away the mist of Tao behind him and shouted, Everyone retreat. Chao Tianji stretched out his hand and punched the void, trying to escape. The young man's voice was leisurely. You come and go as you please? That's not the way to be a guest, is it? As Tang Yan's words fell, the mist of Tao shook violently. Those who were still in a mist of Tao and didn't see this scene didn't know what happened. But at this moment, Han Guanshu held the book of Tao in his hand, and the pages of the book flew, and the sword light cut at Old Monster Chu. Chao Tianji punched with both fists, and a huge figure appeared behind him, wearing golden armor, like a god of war. At the spot where the fists met, a black assassin's long blade slashed out a void wave. When Han Fei saw this blow, he exclaimed, Oh, sh*T. Is this Tang Yin? Is he so crazy? He slashed out a void turbulence with one slash. A part of the void collapsed from a strike. This saber strike was much stronger than his drawing saber art. Han Fei was stunned. It was time to upgrade the drawing technique. No, in fact, Han Fei felt that he had to study all his combat skills carefully. Logically speaking, it wasn't strange for an Exalt realm expert to be able to exert any sort of strength. The use of techniques was no longer enough to make up for the gap between realms. Tang Yan's attack was full of strange charm. It was as if he had already merged his saber with the void and slashed out a Tao rhythm. Yes, when fighting against the Black Killer King, the Black Killer King's great Tao could be used in 3 ways. The first was the various uses of gravity. The second was to use gravity to attack, and the third was to use Taoist rhymes to protect oneself. However, there didn't seem to be anyone like Tang Yin. As Han Fei continued to look, he saw that Chao Tianji's fists were cut into pieces in an instant. Tang Yin screamed, Killing Storm. Bang! There was a loud explosion. Void turbulence surged around Tang Yan's body, but not a single one landed on him. A large amount of void turbulence instantly wrapped Chao Tianji in it. Seeing this, Chao Meng roared and was about to take action, when Chao Tianji shouted, Go! Hey, I haven't fought for a long time. It seems that some people have forgotten. There's still me in this world. Clang, 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 clang. In an instant, tens of thousands of void turbulence slashed, and Chao Qianji's huge god of war phantom was directly shattered, with thousands of knife marks appearing on his body. Humph! Invincible! On the surface of Chao Tianji's body, energy was contracting and expanding. One of his arms was as bright as the sun, and when he punched out, the void turbulence in front of him was shattered. Clang Tang Yin chuckled, and with a crack, his arms were broken. His upper arms folded and pressed against his black saber, which turned into 3 sabers. Clatter, the whole mountain that Han Fei moved here was instantly shattered and turned into powder. This scene was really like a 10,000-meter-long saber light, illuminating the world. Sea of Fists. Han Fei only had time to see a turbulent ocean. It was like a sea, but also like countless fist marks. The violent power directly shook Han Fei's strength back to the original state. In the end, Han Fei saw a big whale emerge. Hiss! With a breath, the entire fog of the Great Path disappeared without a trace in an instant. Everyone's eyes lit up. Han Fei saw that in the distance, in the fog that continued to spread, there was a pool of blood. The star tortoise shrank in its shell, shivering. Han Fei reached out, grabbed the star tortoise, and flew out of the sea with a bang. Gotcha! In the sky, a dark red crack stretched across the sky, which was a sign that a venerable had fallen. Han Fei quickly scanned with his perception, only to see that at the same time, 3 venerables were being reborn from a drop of blood. Among the 3 were Chu Qing, Chao Shuang, and Zhang Jihua. Wait! Han Fei scanned with his perception and didn't find Sun Baisheng and Yang Kuan. Fuse! Activating the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes, Han Fei still didn't find these 2. When Han Fei looked at the sky again, he was shocked. Oh my god, the rain seems to be a bit heavy. Did 2 of them die? A few more people from the big clans came. They entered the fog 1 step later. Maybe they didn't enter the depths and escape the disaster. Hey! Sun and Moon double kill array. The array was 30,000 meters long, covering the sky and the earth, and directly surrounded Chu Qing and the other 2 who were being reborn from a drop of blood. At this time, Han Fei saw old Jiang popping out of nowhere and chuckling. You're early, but you came at the right time. Old Bai, watch me kill the 3 venerables. Idiot, be careful. While Han Fei was surprised, he smelled the aura of an undead creature. Is the Thug Patriarch here? If the Thug Patriarch hadn't come, with old Jiang and old Bai's abilities, even if they were venerables, they wouldn't have been able to make it in time. The scorching sun essence fire roared in the array. The moonlight was like a knife, cutting out thousands of knife shadows. Obviously, this array was also drawn by old Jiang in advance. The terrifying energy in this sun and moon double kill array couldn't be instilled into it by old Jiang in a day or 2. Among the 3, Zhang Jihua was the weakest. However, Zhang Jihua was the most relaxed and could even blast the array. Chao Shuang bombarded him with fist marks. The moon swept across, leaving hundreds of knife marks on his body, but couldn't kill him at all. Only Chu Qing, whose combat power was not weak, was not as good as Chao Shuang's, and his Dao was not as good as Zhang Jihua's. At this moment, his body was burned into a bloody mess. Old Bai bent his fingers and, cooperating with old Jiang, they clawed at Chu Qing, who was the most uncomfortable. Bam! Chu Qing, who had just been reborn from a drop of blood, was immediately clawed to death by old Bai. At this time, the venerables of the Thousand-Star City attacked. One of them attacked the array, and the other 2 dealt with old Bai and old Jiang respectively. Swish! Chen Sanbai chuckled and split his sword into 3,000 swords, stabbing at the 3 of them. Han Fei was not slow either. With the shifting stars, he took out Snowmorn and unsheathed the sword draw technique. Huh! White Beast's soul, suppressor roared. This battle was already a mess. Taking advantage of the opportunity when old Jiang was fighting, Han Fei's sword struck like an eagle and his roar was like thunder. His target was not the person who attacked old Jiang, but Chu Qing, who was recovering in the array. Old Bai and Old Jiang were both venerables, but Chu Qing was an intermediate venerable. No matter how well they prepared, they could barely let Chu Qing be reborn from a drop of blood twice. With the strength and heritage of the Chu sect, this little damage was nothing. So, Han Fei took action in person. A wisp of his soul was frozen by Han Fei's knife. When infinite energy gathered, Han Fei activated the swallowing technique, which made Chao Shuang's heart skip a beat, and she subconsciously glanced at Han Fei. Han Fei's strength had returned. Otherwise, these three people would have been killed by now. However, if Han Fei had to choose one, he would definitely choose Chu Qing. Although the Chao family had come this time, it was enough to make a great enemy of the Chu family. He could kill Zhang Jihua, but the Zhang family had already lost a venerable. In order to prevent the Zhang family from losing everything, he had to destroy the Yin-Yang Heaven's economy. Therefore, it was better to kill Chu Qing. The void line stretched out, and Han Fei pinned Chu Qing down in a flash. Sacrificing punch. Chu Qing tried to be reborn from a drop of blood for the third time, but he was pinned down by Han Fei's void lines. As a result, Han Fei bled from his eyes, nose, mouth, and mouth. However, Han Fei had long been used to being injured. At this moment, he didn't care at all and bombarded with a punch, crushing all the energy here. Kacha! Rumble in the sky, the red mark reappeared, and in a short time, another venerable died. Bam! The array was shattered, and Chao Shuang and Zhang Jihua hurriedly fled. Old Jiang was blown away by a punch. Fortunately, he was protected by a big shield and only vomited a mouthful of blood. Old Jiang shouted, Han Fei boy, if you don't take action, I will kill them. Han Fei rolled his eyes. Look at the blood you vomited. You've just become a venerable. Don't join the fun. Look, if the one who attacked you was an intermediate venerable, you would definitely have escaped. Old Bai grunted. What bad luck. 2 venerables died in a row, but we didn't get any. Han Fei wondered. Wait, 2 venerables died in a row? Weren't there 3? Han Fei was puzzled. He didn't see Yang Kuan or Sun Baixing. Could it be that one of them was still alive? Puff! Suddenly, Han Fei had a bad feeling. A sense of danger came to his heart. The Yang family shouldn't be stupid enough to play tricks. The Sun family. They were not stupid. At this moment, Han Fei only felt that he was in a life-and-death crisis. So, 2 golden fist marks burst out and blasted directly at Old Bai and Old Jiang. These 2 old men couldn't have expected that Han Fei would attack them. So, they were directly blasted away with a surprised look on their faces. In the next moment, a sword light instantly slashed down. Han Fei directly turned into 2 clouds of mist. Even so, golden blood was still splashing. Obviously, he had been seriously injured by that sword. Han Fei. Brat. Old Bai and Old Jiang were shocked and tore the void. Everyone's eyes turned to look at them. Han Guanshu shouted, Sun Shao Tian, you're really bold. Chun Sanbai was the closest to Han Fei, so he didn't have time to react just now. He said, Sun Shao Tian, the oldest of the 3 ancestors of the Sun family. 1,000 years ago, you were already a senior. Let me see if you have reached the peak now. Bam! Before Chun Sanbai took action, with a bang, Sun Shao Tian was directly slapped into pieces. A voice was full of anger. Cunning man, you pretended to be weak and deceived me, but you still succeeded? Damn you! Old Monster Chu was shocked. Sun Shao Tian was slapped into pieces? Damn it, he had to be at least a half-king level powerhouse. Cough, cough. At this time, a cloud of white mist converged into a person. It was none other than Han Fei. Huff! Han Fei opened his mouth and sucked, and the golden blood flew back. Han Fei's face was gloomy. Interesting. I didn't die in the hands of a half-king level powerhouse, but I almost died in your hands. What? Have all the trump cards of the parties been revealed? Is there anything left? If you can't kill me today, you won't have a chance in the future. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1448. The advantage of the Gemini divine technique was that it was difficult for ordinary people to recognize the existence of the black mist. Jinger was really annoyed, because this guy's surname Sun was too cunning. He even pretended to be a weakling. In fact, this guy was not Sun Baixing at all. What was hateful was that Jing was deceived. This could only mean that this Sun Xiaotian was indeed very capable. With this trick of pretending to be someone else, he might even be able to compete with Han Fei. Of course, Jing took action because she had been deceived. She didn't do anything but watch Han Fei, a big living person, but she failed to keep an eye on him and was chopped by him. How could Jing Er's self-esteem withstand this blow? Besides, if she hadn't taken action, under everyone's gaze, Han Fei's black mist would probably have been exposed. The star tortoise, who was not far away from Han Fei, saw that Han Fei was chopped by a sword, and its shell was trembling. F***CK. Are venerables so lowly nowadays? Chopped by Han Fei, and it's Han Fei's number one? Fortunately, the star tortoise knew that Han Fei had the mysterious Gemini divine technique. Otherwise, it would have already taken action. Oh, Tang Yan's voice sounded, because even he didn't know about Jing Er's existence. In other words, they were all half-king, and no one was much stronger than the other. Otherwise, Tang Yan would have chopped Chao Tianji in half. Han Guanshu didn't dare to challenge old Monster Chu. Besides, Jing Er was the one who had been with the king the longest among all of them. Her daily life in the Immortal Palace was already very boring, and she couldn't disturb the king. Therefore, she always treated herself as a transparent person and tried not to let the king notice her existence. Therefore, Jing Er's hiding ability had never been weak. At this moment, Jing Er appeared. The moment Jing Er appeared, old Monster Chu's heart froze. F***CK. Where did this half-king come from? Is there no end to this? Chao Tianji shattered his arms, and his fist waves shook for thousands of miles, forcibly withstood the power of Tang Yan's knife, and dragged Chao Shuang and Chao Ming away with a void giant hand. He didn't say anything. The moment Jing Er appeared, Chao Tianji knew that there was no way he could fight this battle. Tang Yan alone was enough to make everyone panic like this. At this time, another unfamiliar half-king had come. Even if the black killer snail king came back and joined forces with them, at most it would be a draw. Go! Old Monster Chu and Jing Er clashed once again. Old Monster Chu stretched out his hand and grabbed the reborn Sun Xiaotian. Then, Old Freak Chu flew far away and said leisurely, "Very good. You've deceived the entire 1,000-star city with a scam. This time, I admit defeat. Han Fei, I'll wait for you in the 1,000-star city." Buzz, buzz, buzz. Too many venerables had died today. For the battle to reach this point, they had already profited greatly. Chu Qing, Yi Kai, Yang Kun, who should have been killed by Tang Yan at random, and the two that Han Fei killed in a fit of anger. The aristocratic families alone had lost 5 venerable ones. 4 of them were killed by Han Fei. As for the others, they were naturally the forces of the sea demons. In a single day, 10 venerables had fallen, and that wasn't even including the power of the Black Killer King's projection. Otherwise, the number would be even higher. Just now, although Jing Er slapped Sun Xiaotian to death, she didn't kill him. Jing Er pouted at Han Fei. "Leave him to yourself." Han Fei nodded slightly. This shouldn't be considered as Jing Er helping him. However, Jing Er's appearance did scare them away. At this moment, the Yin-Yang Heaven Alliance presented 3 major forces. For now, Han Fei's side was undoubtedly the strongest, because the 7 major sects had already taken sides. Especially after this battle, Han Fei's side had proved that they had enough power to compete with the aristocratic families. The 7 major sects were also happy to see this. However, they weren't too happy about this so-called King's Corpse scam. In their opinion, Han Fei must have known about this. After all, it was Han Fei who led everyone into the mist, who gave Han Fei the strength to fight the sea demons. All of this indicated that Han Fei had long known about the plot. But did Han Fei really know? At this moment, Han Fei was also quite confused. He expected that Tang Yan would take action, but he didn't expect that Tang Yan would directly come out. Obviously, Tang Yan was no stranger to old Monster Chu and the others. He was waiting for them to come to him. Brilliant! What a brilliant move. However, although this scam also deceived the 7 major sects, The people of the 7 major sects were greatly disappointed. It seemed that finding the way to become a king through these opportunities was not very reliable. The heavenly sword master shouted, "Let's go!" Swish, swish, as soon as the sword master left, Jian Sanqing and the others naturally followed. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the sky. Since old Monster Chu and the others had gone back, they naturally had to go back. For the strong, what was the bottom line? It was hard to say. What if these people lost the battle on the Scattered Stars Island and took out their anger on the 7 major sects? Oh, Han Fei thought of something. Fortunately, he pretended to be good. If he hadn't asked old Monster Chu and the others for resources, they probably wouldn't have believed him and directly entered the mist. However, Han Fei still grinned. He felt a huge amount of power, of faith drilling into his body. Jinger stepped out and disappeared into the void. Xue Xinqi glanced at Han Fei and the others, and then looked at Elder Chun and the Star Tortoise. Go back and clean up the mess. The Star Tortoise was still hesitating whether to leave or not. Now it seemed that Han Fei's side was the safest. How could Xue Xinqi not know what it was thinking? He said directly, "It's the most dangerous place to stay with him. What if he's going to fight again? Are you going too?" The Star Tortoise pondered. That seems to be true. So, the Star Tortoise immediately said, "I've just made a breakthrough and haven't consolidated my strength yet. Otherwise, I will definitely be able to take down one in this battle." As it spoke, the Star Tortoise had already climbed to Xue Xinqi's side and glanced at him. "Let's go." The old servant of the Yi family secretly breathed a sigh of relief and cupped his hands at Han Fei. "Goodbye." The old servant of the Yi family was the most relaxed but also the most worried one. He was relaxed because his sense of existence was extremely low. He came last in the battle on the Scattered Stars Island. He participated in the battle on this side because he was called by Han Fei. If Han Fei didn't call him, he couldn't come. Suddenly, there were only Han Fei, Bai Kongyi, Jiang Daiqian, Han Guanshu, and Tang Yin who walked over arrogantly with a saber on his shoulder. This was completely different from the Tang, Yin, and Han Fei's mind. Han Fei thought that a person who could stay in the body of the cloud whale for 1,800 years should be an extremely calm person. He should have the same temperament as old Han. But it turned out to be completely different. Tang Yin curled the corners of his mouth and said in an unruly tone, "Boy Han, is the power of a half-king useful?" Han Fei smiled faintly and said, "Of course it's very useful. Unfortunately, it doesn't last long." Tang Yin laughed and scolded. "If it lasts long enough, won't you be able to kill all of them? After all, it's not your own power. It's fine to use it temporarily to deal with the sea demons. Just focus on your cultivation in the future." Then, Tang Yin glanced in the direction of the Scattered Stars Island, and then at Han Guanshu, cursing, "Taking advantage of me, you be asterisk-starred. That's too unkind of you." Han Guanshu chuckled and said, "Anyway, this is a very different path. What do you think?" Tang Yin snorted. "Fine." For some reason, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Old Han and Tang Yin seemed to be very familiar with each other. Han Fei had suspected this before and felt that old Han and Tang Yin must know each other. Otherwise, why would Tang Yin lend him the power of a half-king? However, Tang Yin's look just now made him a little panicked. Han Fei sensed it and immediately said, "No, wait a moment, Tang Ge." Han Fei suddenly remembered that apart from old Han's own son, Tang Ge was also his adopted son. Then where did Tang Ge come from? He was already so talented at the beginning, and his cultivation speed was extremely fast. What he awakened was a legendary spiritual beast, the dragon feather lobster. Did that make sense? At this moment, Han Fei frowned and looked at Tang Yin. Tang Yin chuckled. "I am me, and he is him. You have her father's plan, and now it's my turn to do it." In the direction of the Sea of Pearls, Tang Ge and Mu Ling were fighting each other. The void suddenly collapsed, and the two of them were directly sucked in. Han Fei seemed to have realized what was going on. He looked at these people with a complicated expression. They were all fooling around just to find a unique path. So, Tang Ge was Tang Yan's reincarnation? However, Tang Yin was still here. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What's the deal with the corpse of the cloud whale? Are you the cloud whale, or are you just you?" Tang Yin laughed. "I am me. The cloud whale is my spiritual beast." Han Fei didn't believe it. The corpse of the cloud whale is real. Han Fei believed that it was definitely the real cloud whale. He clearly sensed the path and obtained a lot of spirit awakening fluid and ultra-quality demonic stones from there. Tang Yin told him everything he knew. He didn't seem to have anything to hide, nor did he bother to. He said, "The corpse of a king under the Empyrean waterfall was used by me 1,800 years ago. You should know where the corpse of the cloud whale is. However, it is indeed not a king, but a body that failed to pass the king's tribulation. That opportunity doesn't belong to any of you. You don't have to worry about it anymore." The other party had already made things so clear. Han Fei roughly understood that Tang Yin was Tang Yin. This time, he might be helping Han Fei, but he shouldn't be purely on Han Fei's side. Tang Yin smiled casually and looked at Han Guanshu. "In this battle, I killed a kid from the Yang family and cut off half of Chao Tianji's flesh, ensuring that he won't be able to recover for 10 years. Tang Ji's favor has been returned. Let's go. Help me keep my secret. If you want to attack the Thousand-Star City, remember not to call me." Tang Yin left, very chic. Han Fei guessed that this guy must have run into the stomach of the cloud whale again. Rip! Right at this moment, a pair of big white bone hands tore open the void and crawled out with a strong death aura. The Thug Patriarch said, "You made a lot of noise here. Unfortunately, I was entangled by Chu Min Wang. If Ren Tianfei hadn't left a fist mark on me, I would have been killed." Han Guanshu smiled and said, "Didn't you get your body back?" The Thug Patriarch nodded. "After all, the time is too short. If I had another 30 or 50 years, I would have suppressed the Thousand-Star City again." Chapter 1449. Listening to the conversation between the Thug Patriarch and Han Guanshu, Han Fei couldn't help but scratch his head. When he became the supreme commander of the Scattered Stars Island, he suddenly found that there were a lot of strong masters in the Thousand-Star City. Han Fei thought to himself. The old turtle said, "Well, you've been quite successful." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "A yo-yo? My sense of accomplishment has been completely destroyed by these people." The Thug Patriarch glanced at Han Fei. "Han Fei, you seem to have won today's battle. In fact, the sea demons haven't been annihilated yet, which is one reason. Secondly, the situation in the Thousand-Star City is more complicated than you think. The big clans have been working hard for thousands of years. They won't decline in just a few battles." Han Fei said indifferently. "The trap of the Empyrean waterfall has been uncovered. The Black Killer Snail King is not a fool. He should already know the situation here. Without any benefits, he doesn't need to fight against human beings now. So, he won't come in short time. No matter how many venerables there are in the Thousand-Star City, they can't stand the death of a few every few years. If they continue to die like this, what will happen to the Thousand-Star City? Besides, with the restraint of the 7 major sects, they can't do anything in a short time, even if they want to." Suddenly, Han Fei looked around. "Where's that old man Ren Tianfei?" Han Guanshu said lightly. "He didn't come in person. He sent 2 clones with the power of 2 punches." Han Fei wondered he can't come. Han Guanshu said, "His situation is complicated. You'll know when you see him later." The Thug Patriarch chuckled. "Boy, just become a king as soon as you can. I'll guard the level 3 fishery and wait for the day you become a king." Then the Thug Patriarch looked at the void in the direction of peaceful. With a swish, he tore the void open and fled. As for Old Bai and Old Jiang, seeing that everyone had left, they didn't need to say anything. Old Jiang patted Han Fei on the shoulder. "Brat, the Thug Academy is about to be rebuilt. What do you think it should be?" Han Fei grinned. "The Blue Sea Town. Has our land been occupied?" Old Jiang glared. "Who dares to occupy it?" Han Fei said, "That's great. The 36 towns in the future will be small." Its status was no weaker than that of the Thousand-Star City. The big families control the Thousand-Star City, and we control the 36 towns. Only in this way can we challenge them. Old Bai nodded slightly. "That's good too. Let's go back to the Blue Sea town and take a look when we have time. He didn't say anything to Han Fei, and even old Jiang didn't say much. After all, the father and son must have something to say. This kind of victory seemed to be a matter of course, but in fact, there were countless mysteries within. Han Fei, on the other hand, had just joined the game and barely made a move in this game. However, it was also this move that made everyone realize that Han Fei's power made them have to pay attention to him. After Old Bai and Old Jiang left, only Han Fei and Han Guanshu were left here. Han Fei had always felt that the way he got along with Old Han was weird. In the end, he didn't show any father-son bond, and all he taught was scheming. Han Guanshu smiled faintly. Did you gain a lot this time? Han Fei nodded. You've become a semi-venerable, but it's hard to say whether you can become a venerable or not. Han Guanshu nodded slightly. Yes, after becoming a venerable, you will also be one of the top powerhouses in this yin-yang heaven. To be honest, I don't want you to become a venerable. However, I still have a lot of things to do, so you must become a venerable. At least, you still need to pick up your sister. Seeing old Han's frankness, Han Fei couldn't help but be a little confused. A lot of things? Han Guanshu smiled faintly. You become a venerable first. I'm still very free for the time being. Han Fei didn't care about this. At most, he would go to talk to his mother. The problem was, didn't he have to wait until he became a king? After he entered the 9th Immortal Palace and learned more about it, he wasn't in a hurry. Han Fei looked at old Han with a strange look. Old Han, Tango, Han Guanshu said lightly, just be normal. However, you probably won't be able to see him in a short time. After chatting for a while, the two had nothing to talk about. Han Fei immediately changed the topic. Old Han, what realm are you in? Han Guanshu's lips curled up slightly. Quite high. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. How high is that? Han Guanshu casually glanced at Han Fei's chest. I'm afraid I'll scare you if I tell you. By the way, the turtle inside, I don't know how you came here. However, don't bully my son because he doesn't understand the world of the strong. When my son becomes a king, you will be his servant and sign a master-servant contract with my son. Otherwise, I will kill you. Han Fei, the old turtle. After saying that, Han Guanshu stepped into the void with a swoosh, and no one knew where he went. Han Fei was stunned for a long time before he said lightly, Old Yuan, what kind of contract is a master-servant contract? The old turtle roared angrily. You've gone too far. I'm a king. Oh no. The old turtle, who was cursing, suddenly trembled and hurriedly said, Your father caught my clone. He set up a life or death restriction spell on me. Oh, Han Fei was at a loss and didn't understand. However, it sounded like it was very powerful. Han Fei ignored the roaring old turtle and looked down, only to see that this place had already been smashed into ruins. Here, sword chi and fist lights were everywhere. All kinds of great techniques almost overturned the sea. It went all the way down for dozens of miles, and almost everything was turned upside down. Until now, the residual power here was not something that an explorer could touch. Han Fei couldn't help but shake his head. However, Han Fei suddenly grabbed a huge piece of iron from the bottom of the sea. In Forge the Universe, pieces of strange bones and strange iron with strange auras were melted into the huge iron. Han Fei used his fingers as knives, and one weird array after another appeared on the huge iron. Half an hour later, after Han Fei blasted 12 rounds of the 100 Wars hammer, a huge pillar was forged. Bam! As soon as this pillar appeared, the power emitted by all the great techniques and special abilities within a radius of 10,000 kilometers was all absorbed and gathered on the pillar. Of course, even if the power here was reduced by 90% in an instant, it was still not something ordinary people could come here. Seeing this scene, the old turtle was surprised. You used an ultra-quality divine weapon to fix this place. Aren't you afraid that it will be pulled away? Han Fei thought for a moment. This place is only 300,000 kilometers away from the Scattered Stars Island. In the future, the sea will be open. Now, if we don't seal this place, it will become a dangerous place. However, what you said makes sense. Then only humans can use it. After fiddling with it for a while, Han Fei finally modified this huge rod. In the end, Han Fei stood above the sea and looked at the ocean abyss that had formed here. He thought, it's still a bit dangerous here. So, I'd better set up hundreds of arrays, first to make this vortex much smaller. In the future, human beings can also explore this place. After doing all this, Han Fei grinned and engraved the words, Ocean Pacifying Godly Needle, on this rod with snowmorn. He didn't use the words, Wishful Rod, nor did he engrave its weight. Han Fei suddenly realized that the golden cudgel might have been destroyed by someone in a fight. That's why he installed an array eye on it. Otherwise, why would the ocean be turbulent after Monkey King pulled it away? After doing all this, Han Fei drew an array with one hand. This was a directional teleportation array leading to the general's mansion. Swish! As soon as he entered the general's mansion, Han Fei immediately opened all the seals. The power of wish was surging in crazily. He knew that the people on the Scattered Stars Island should be excited at this moment. Han Fei activated the Tao Seed, and the white mist bridge suddenly reappeared. Whoosh! With a thought in his mind, the surging power of wish was quickly integrated into the white mist. The white mist was rapidly decreasing at a subtle speed visible to the naked eye. Half an hour, 2 hours. After an hour, the white mist had become a shallow layer, less than 1/10 of the original. And Han Fei also felt that the power of wish seemed to have been reduced by half. After another half an hour, Han Fei finally saw the body of the bridge. It was a kind of bridge made of green jade, not a white jade bridge, nor any other color, but an emerald-like jade bridge, which looked a little weird. When the white mist completely dissipated, the power of wish was no longer consumed. The old turtle said in surprise, "What kind of Tao is this?" Han Fei said with a smile, "You'll know when you walk over." This time, Han Fei didn't hesitate at all and stepped onto the green jade stone bridge. Just like last time, as soon as Han Fei stepped on it, he lost contact with the old turtle and seemed to have lost contact with the outside world. At this moment, Han Fei looked at the outside world and the door from the bridge. Suddenly, he found that time was still. Han Fei secretly took a breath. Yes, the time in the outside world was frozen. Oh no, or rather, the time on this green jade stone bridge was frozen. That was to say, there was no concept of time when he walked on this bridge. This also meant that if he fought with others and needed to use this bridge when necessary, others might not be able to see it all. Clatter, clatter, it was effortless for Han Fei to walk to the 7th floor of the bridge. When he walked to the 8th floor, Han Fei paused. In the past, when he walked here, Han Fei felt that his body was suppressed by a terrifying force, and it was difficult for him to stand. He wondered what the green jade stone bridge would be like when it was fully revealed. Bam! Han Fei took a step forward. When he took this step, Han Fei found that there was still gravity. This gravity was about 1,000 times. Of course, this gravity couldn't suppress Han Fei. Han Fei was overjoyed. This gravity was less than 1% of the previous one. On the second step, Han Fei frowned slightly. The gravity seemed to have doubled. On the third step, Han Fei confirmed that the gravity doubled again. Han Fei immediately took a breath of cold air. In other words, below the 8th floor, he had to bear more than 100,000 times the gravity? Was his great Tao such a scam? Chapter 1450. The Black Killer Snail King could reach 10,000 times the gravity with a flip of its hand. Even so, Han Fei wasn't afraid at all. What was terrifying about gravity was not just the weight, but its irregular changes. Even if you could resist the ultra-high pressure gravity, if this kind of gravity was changing, your movements would be inaccurate, which was the most fatal. And this kind of directional pressure was the least fatal. Therefore, even though Han Fei estimated that he might have to bear nearly 130,000 times the gravity in the end, he didn't panic. Not only was Han Fei not panicked, but he was even a little surprised. Although he didn't feel much about his golden body. In fact, anyone who came to hold it might not be able to do so. It could be said that Han Fei had subtle power control in his daily walking and riding. Only in this way could he look no different from ordinary people. In other words, at this point, Han Fei was cultivating when he was walking, when he was sitting, and even when he was sleeping. If he didn't cultivate and lay on the bed would definitely collapse. Wasn't this the trouble of cultivators? At this moment, he stepped on the bridge. The first floor, the second floor, the third floor. When he reached the 8th floor, Han Fei felt that his legs were trembling. After all, he was heavier now. Fortunately, he had a golden body and his spiritual heritage was transcendent. Therefore, Han Fei just steadied himself and then completely stood still. With every step Han Fei took, he could see that there were 3 paths ahead, but they were all blurry. It seemed that only when he got off the stone bridge could he see them clearly. This time, he was very successful. When Han Fei walked off the green jade stone bridge, it wasn't his eyes that lit up, but his mind was refreshed. It seemed that, in the dark, there was a power passing to him and telling him that the road in front of him could change at any time, and it didn't specify which road he had to take. Instead, he could take all 3 roads, and there were even other roads that he could take. Wow! Han Fei gasped. Damn it, from the beginning to the end, everyone's answer was to take a road and achieve a great way. The great Taoists attracted one another. If one walked on someone else's great Tao, it was possible that someone else would take advantage of them. But now, his great Tao could be switched between different paths? Didn't that mean that if someone wanted to cut his leeks, he could just change his path? Thinking of this, Han Fei couldn't have been more excited. It was said that there were thousands of great Taoists, but only one was chosen. But he could walk out of 3. Wait a minute. What Han Fei comprehended was the Tianqi Great Way on the left and the Invincible Road on the right. However, it seemed that these 2 paths could be replaced. In other words, he could switch between them. A terrifying and weird idea popped up in Han Fei's mind again. It seemed like he could use this Tao to copy the great Tao of others. Yes, Han Fei looked at the heavenly opening avenue, his mind clear. However, the holy light on that path immediately faded, turning into a flat ground covered by an invisible force. The Black Killer King's path of gravity. Han Fei felt that as long as he stood on this path, he would be able to use the Tao of gravity. However, Han Fei still changed it back. When the holy light reappeared, Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. The Tao of gravity was not as good as the Tianqi Great Way. With this path, as long as he wasn't crushed into pieces, even if ordinary venerables didn't even have a chance to be resurrected, he should be able to save them. Of course, this was just Han Fei's current feeling. After all, the Tianqi Great Way was just a great Tao. In this world, there is no absolutely invincible great Tao. Even if there was, it should be his own invincible road, not the Tianqi Great Way. As for the invincible road on the right, Han Fei thought that this was a path that he had to take. After all, this path was too powerful. The reason why he had always been able to defeat the strong and was invincible in his realm was because of the invincible Great Way. In Han Fei's current situation, in fact, he could use both the Tianqi Great Way and the Invincible Road. However, now Han Fei was only using the most basic ones and didn't go deep. Want to go deep? He probably had to walk on these 2 paths to be able to succeed. In the end, Han Fei focused all his attention on the middle road. Before, every time he came to this bridge, Han Fei would see. On the middle road, there was an identical version of himself. Now, when Han Fei had walked down, he found that this identical version of himself had disappeared. Neither the left nor the right had changed. Why was the middle path the only one that had changed? In Han Fei's heart, a rather absurd understanding suddenly appeared. Over the years, Han Fei had always thought that he could create something out of nothing. That was the power of fantasy. He imagined that he had some kind of power. However, at this moment, when Han Fei suddenly turned around, a scene that made his blood run cold appeared. He found that on the Jade Bridge, there was another version of himself, walking down the bridge. Han Fei's eyelids twitched wildly. What kind of weird great Tao is this? Is the version of myself on the bridge me, or the version of myself under the bridge me? So, every time I look down from the bridge, I can see another version of myself. Little did he know that when he looked up from the bridge, he could always see another version of himself. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. This was a bit weird, so weird that Han Fei doubted whether he was himself or not. Feeling that his heart had stopped for 3 or 5 seconds, Han Fei suddenly shivered. No, no, the version of myself I see on the bridge is emotionless, just like a robot. It can't be like me. Han Fei stuck out his tongue and twisted his but at the version of himself on the bridge, almost doing a 360-degree spin. Feeling that he was a retard, Han Fei stopped and looked back at the road in the middle again, with a smile on his lips. Just now he had scared himself. In fact, there were no two versions of himself. Why could he see another version of himself on the bridge and under the bridge? This was understandable. Perhaps it was because he was walking towards a version of himself with different possibilities. It could also be said that he was walking towards his future version. There was a gap of 7 or 8 steps between the two versions of himself. Therefore, there was a variable in the middle, a variable that might influence the Great Tao. In these 8 steps, he could walk on any of the Great Taos, which gave him thousands of possibilities. Then, according to this reasoning, he could also take countless Great Tao. Han Fei's chest rose and fell, and after gasping for breath for dozens of seconds, he gradually calmed down. The temptation was too great to resist. Originally, Han Fei thought that 3 Great Tao was already very impressive. The other 2 could be changed, which already gave him a lot of Great Tao. No. If the middle road may be all Great Tao, then its existence actually overlaps with the 2 Great Tao on the left and right. Han Fei frowned and was pondering, trying to sort out his thoughts again. First of all, the middle road is my real Great Tao. There is no doubt about this. The Great Tao on the left and right can be changed, but not in the middle. Secondly, if I have the power of 3 Great Tao at the same time, then the middle road must be different from the left and right. It needs to be stronger than the left and right roads. Stronger than the invincible road? It's either a secret method or my future self. This is in line with the characteristics of this road. I can randomly steal a certain amount of power in the unpredictable future. However, this kind of power has a limit. Where is the limit? Soon, Han Fei was no longer confused. After all, the Jadestone Bridge had been taken. Now, he should be able to use these 3 Great Tao. However, the middle road was particularly special. He needed to find the limit of this power. Immediately, Han Fei thought of giving himself the power of the Venerable Realm. This was a terrifying power that transcended realms. The moment Han Fei thought of this, Han Fei felt the weight on his shoulders suddenly became heavy and his body became soft. Originally, the gravity was only about 130,000 kilograms, but now he felt that it might have suddenly increased by more than 3 times. At that time, Han Fei staggered under the pressure. However, Han Fei still resisted this force. However, when he took a closer look, he was no longer on the Jadestone Bridge. The scene in the Great Tao suddenly disappeared without a trace, and he was standing in the general's mansion, feeling that his strength had expanded by 3 times. Oh my God! Fortunately, the power is not fake. I can really imagine it. Since Han Fei's strength had been improving rapidly, when he reached the realm of an advanced explorer, the power of secret methods was almost useless. Unless it was a secret method on the level of the Demon King's contract. However, that kind of secret method couldn't be obtained easily, and the side effects were definitely not small. Even the Beast King art could only provide him with less than twice the strength. But what he had now was not a secret method, was it? This was his King Great Tao. It had nothing to do with secret methods or anything. Even if he reached the Venerable Realm, maybe this Great Tao could continue to be strengthened. Wow! Han Fei seemed to have discovered something extraordinary. His Great Tao seemed to be getting more and more exaggerated. It was like a secret technique with growth potential. As soon as Han Fei appeared, the old turtle immediately said, "What's going on? Your Great Tao has been taken, but it shouldn't have become so much stronger all of a sudden." Why do I feel that you have already reached the venerable realm?" Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei immediately thought of something, and the power of the great Tao immediately dissipated. Although Han Fei really wanted to find someone to fight and feel it in detail. However, a fight between a venerable was too noisy, so it was unnecessary. After this power dissipated, Han Fei felt that his body was a little weak, and his energy and spiritual energy seemed to be insufficient. Immediately, Han Fei swallowed a mouthful of Forge the Universe. This consumption seems to be a bit big. What if I only double it? As Han Fei thought of something again, he felt that his strength had skyrocketed again. However, compared to before, his strength was much weaker. However, it was twice as strong as his original strength. F***CK. So simple? Is this the power of the great Tao? It's so F***king useful. Chapter 1451. In this world, there were many happy things. Undoubtedly, Han Fei felt extremely happy after knowing the power of truth. Most importantly, this power belonged to him alone. It was something that could grow, and he didn't need to pay any side effects. Seeing the sudden change in Han Fei's strength, the old turtle immediately hummed. "Is your power of truth enhanced?" Han Fei grinned. Sort of. Han Fei waved his hand, and the power dissipated. Immediately afterward, Han Fei waved his hand casually and shouted, "Break!" At that moment, the spiritual energy in his body surged, and countless energy fruits collapsed. After about 10 minutes, Han Fei opened his eyes and let out a long breath. Looking at his mind, a string of information popped up. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 79, semi-venerable. Spiritual energy 360, 000/360, 000. Chaotic energy, untransformed. Spiritual power 49999/49999. Perception range greater than 8,000 kilometers. Strength greater than 1,912 waves. First spiritual heritage, unknown. Second spiritual heritage, unawakened. First spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 69. Second spiritual beast, unawakened. Main art, sky stealing technique. Level 6 of void fishing, venerable level, divine quality. When Han Fei saw this information, his heart didn't change much. The increase of spiritual power and perception range was only obtained with the improvement of his realm. After all, semi-venerable was also a venerable. His strength didn't increase much, but it was better than nothing. He believed that when he became a venerable, his strength would definitely soar. As for the amount of spiritual energy, it was no longer attractive to Han Fei. But when he saw the word chaotic energy, Han Fei knew that the demon purification pot had changed. If he became a venerable, there should be a lot of changes. Now, with the blessing of a large amount of power, he became a semi-venerable. In his heart, Han Fei knew that he could make a breakthrough, just like he had a hunch that he could make a breakthrough at any time. Not paying much attention to the changes in information, Han Fei was thinking that what he really needed to study in the semi-venerable realm was his use of the power of truth. This time, after crossing the green jadestone bridge, Han Fei felt that he had some understanding of the truth. Han Fei was very sure that if he used the apocalyptic divine technique now, the effect would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. It would be completely different from when he used decades of vitality every now and then. In the same way, in his mind, there was clear progress on the invincible realm. Of course, Han Fei hadn't had a chance to use these powers yet. He needed to find a place to try them. Buzz! The next moment, Han Fei stepped into Forge the Universe. He hadn't entered Forge the Universe for a long time, mainly because he had been practicing in the past few years. There was no need to come in, and he didn't need to hide at all. Originally, Han Fei hoped that he could test his 3 Daos in Forge the Universe. After all, one had to first familiarize themselves with their own great Dao from half-venerable realm to true venerable realm. Han Fei, who had crossed the stone bridge, also knew very well that this familiarization process was actually very simple. He was different from others. He didn't need to repeatedly ponder and search for his own path. He had stumbled upon his own path by accident. Who knew how this Tao seed was born? Anyway, he was born just like that. The Tao seed coincided with the path of a cultivator. There must be a reason why Han Fei could give birth to such a weird Tao seed. This Tao seed was like a Tao Tai, doing the work of an empty-handed wolf, copying other people's great Tao, stealing power from the future, and having three great Tao at the same time. What was it if not a Tao Tai? But when Han Fei was about to study his own great Tao, he suddenly discovered that there seemed to be some slight changes at the border of Forge the Universe. Before he came in, Han Fei fished things out of Forge the Universe. How could he pay attention to the border? But now, as soon as he entered, Han Fei found something wrong. There seemed to be some blue light twisting at the periphery of Forge the Universe. Han Fei was very familiar with Forge the Universe, but he had never found this before. After a moment of daze, Han Fei turned his eyes to the demon purification pot again. This time, it was not as simple as looking at the information. In the dark nothingness, Han Fei saw that in this nothingness, there were three small words, time chain. These three small words were lit up, but when exactly did they light up? Han Fei was still dumbfounded. Suddenly, Han Fei's heart tightened. The time when the demon purification pot changed was probably when it swallowed the dragon origin Shi in the Battle of the Water with Heavenly Island. For a long time, the demon purification pot had not done anything, or the demon purification pot had shown too many abilities. Han Fei felt that this was already the limit of the demon purification pot. All that was left was to find the remaining vines of the demon purification pot. But now it seemed that this was not the case at all. It was very likely that the demon purification pot was not full before, so some of its abilities had not been revealed. As he became stronger and stronger, he encountered more and more opportunities, and the special energy he could get also increased. In fact, the demon purification pot had been growing. Immediately, Han Fei imprinted his mind on it, trying to open the so-called time chain and see what this new function was. However, when Han Fei's perception scanned it, he found that some information emerged. Unlocking the time chain requires 10 billion points of spiritual energy or 100 streams of chaotic energy. Wow! Han Fei immediately gasped. Is this a robbery? 10 billion points of spiritual energy? Han Fei did have some. Of course, if he could convert demonic energy into spiritual energy, it would be even better. Even if he had to use spiritual energy, he had enough. However, compared with the large number of ultra-quality demonic stones he had, his spiritual energy reserve were not so abundant. As for the so-called chaotic energy, he obviously didn't have any. He had encountered so many opportunities, and Old Yuan had followed him for a long time. However, he didn't seem to have collected much chaotic energy. Immediately, Han Fei asked, Old Yuan, how many streams of chaotic energy do you have now? The old turtle's heart skipped a beat. Why do you ask this? I only have 2 streams of chaotic energy so far. When I killed the Venerable One, I even wasted a strand of it. Han Fei didn't really want to rob the old turtle of his chaotic energy. He just wanted to judge the difficulty of obtaining chaotic energy according to the old turtle's answer. Now it seemed that this thing was not easy to get. Even if Old Yuan was lying to him, he probably didn't have much chaotic energy. Even if he had 10, so what? He didn't believe that this guy could hide 100 streams. Obviously, it was more difficult to obtain 100 streams of chaotic energy than to obtain 10 billion points of spiritual energy. Immediately, Han Fei gathered 20,000 ultra-quality demonic stones and extracted a tremendous amount of demonic energy. It would be great if the demon purification pot could absorb it. If the demon purification pot didn't want it, it didn't matter. He could also cultivate with demonic energy. Anyway, he could take his time. Maybe it would be useful in fights in the future. Open. The massive amount of demonic energy, accompanied by a small amount of spiritual spring, evaporated at the same time and was crazily sucked by the demon purification pot. Immediately, Han Fei was speechless. So, for the demon purification pot, demonic energy and spiritual energy were actually the same kind of energy? The demon purification pot ate both and didn't care which one it ate. Seeing that, Han Fei set up a spirit-gathering array, trying to absorb the demonic qi that was absorbed by the demon purification pot. However, compared to the power of the demon purification gourd, the spirit-gathering array was completely insignificant and useless. But fortunately, the demon purification pot absorbed indiscriminately. Therefore, in addition to the demonic energy and spiritual spring that had been extracted, a large amount of spiritual energy was also extracted from the mountainous pile of ultra-quality demonic stones. In less than 100 seconds, Han Fei found that most of the demonic energy had been consumed. As for his own spiritual energy, only less than 500 million had been consumed. At this time, the 10 billion points of spiritual energy needed by the demon purification pot were full. Han Fei let out a long sigh of relief. However, there were still 3 billion points of demonic energy, which still filled the entire Forge the Universe. With a thought, Han Fei filled the edge of Forge the Universe with the demonic energy and let it slowly expand the size of Forge the Universe. Compared with demonic energy, Han Fei naturally preferred spiritual energy. However, Han Fei knew very well that both demonic energy and spiritual energy would be gradually abandoned by him in the near future, and the chaotic energy that he hadn't seen yet would become the mainstream. The old turtle was dumbfounded by Han Fei's series of actions. He knew that Han Fei must have made an exchange with the demon purification pot again. It seemed that this little calabash had the ability to steal the fortune of heaven and earth. He swallowed 10 billion points of demonic energy, just like that, and he didn't hesitate at all. The moment the time chain was unlocked, Han Fei immediately discovered that there seemed to be some faint blue halos circulating in this Forge the Universe. He seemed to have seen this kind of halo before Han Fei remembered where he had seen it. Suddenly, the old turtle exclaimed, "What? The Great Path of Time? Your world can modify the Great Path of Time independently?" Huh? Han Fei was dumbfounded. What Great Path of Time? However, Han Fei was not a fool. Hearing what the old turtle said, he couldn't help but say, "Old Yuan, tell me more clearly. Does this time acceleration mean that the time in my space has changed?" The old turtle was silent for a long time before he said, "Yes. This is a forbidden technique. Some kings often secretly create such small secret realms. Now, let's see how fast time passes in this world of yours, and we'll know." Han Fei nodded. "That's easy." With a thought, Han Fei activated the Gemini divine technique, one inside and the other outside. After only a few minutes, Han Fei confirmed excitedly, twice. 1 day outside, 2 days in here. Phew! The old turtle immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "You scared me. Only twice. That's not a big deal. Time acceleration below 10 times is acceptable." After hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei glanced at the demon purification pot obediently. At this moment, Han Fei saw in the void, under the time chain, the number 2 of 128. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What about more than 10 times acceleration?" The old turtle said, "That's a forbidden technique. You will be hunted." Han Fei's eyelids twitched and he asked, "Who will be hunted?" The old turtle subconsciously said, "The Temple of Time, of course." Ba ba ba. I didn't say anything. Han Fei was deep in thought. It seemed that he had one more enemy. This one seemed to be quite impressive. Chapter 1452. Han Fei had always thought that only mysterious creatures like the time dragon carp could make use of things like time, like Little Black, Little White, and Master Hexagon. The birth of these creatures was irregular, but extremely mysterious. That was why they had some strange abilities. Now, the demon purification pot had given birth to a power that could slow down time, making the time in the entire Forge the Universe completely independent from the time of the outside world, which was undoubtedly beneficial to his cultivation. And his current Forge the Universe had a radius of 10 kilometers and was full of spiritual energy and energy. In fact, it was completely enough for his cultivation. Han Fei didn't intend to forge the universe all the time, so he just wanted to expand it. After all, once he became a king in the future and established his own chaotic sea, it would truly belong to him. Just when Han Fei was about to continue experimenting, he suddenly sensed that the star tortoise had returned with an undersea mountain, preparing to fill the hollowed place on the side of the Empyrean waterfall. Han Fei thought to himself, "Anyway, I've already become a semi-venerable, mastered the power of Tao, discovered the anomaly of the demon purification pot, and disassembled enough spiritual energy." In a short time, he had almost settled all the prerequisites for becoming a venerable, so he wasn't in a hurry to become a venerable. After Han Fei left the general's mansion, he had to continue harvesting a wave of power of wish. He had just solved more than half of the mysteries of Tao. Although there was still a lot left, he might not have many such opportunities to collect power of wish in the future, so he decided to harvest it all at once. After leaving the general's mansion, Han Fei scanned the area with his perception, only to find that the star tortoise had gone to move the mountain again. Shueishenqi was not on the Scattered Stars Island. He must have gone to bring Jiuyin Ling and the others back. Elder Chun went back to the Scattered Stars archive room. The cloud whale was floating in the sea 6,000 kilometers away, carrying thousands of people, all of whom were the soldiers of the Scattered Stars Island who chased after the enemy. Looking at some people laughing and cursing on the back of the cloud whale, Han Fei couldn't help but wonder what would you think if you knew that you were sitting on a semi-king? Anyway, Han Fei glanced around and found that except for the star tortoise, who deliberately watched the rocks flying back and forth to attract the attention of countless people, no other venerable appeared on the Scattered Stars Island. Han Fei mourned for the black snail, king, in his heart. If that guy was bolder and came back now, well, it was still useless. Tang Yin was still here. For some reason, Han Fei was in a good mood. He snorted and jumped out with a swish. Outside the West City, the Scattered Stars Island was in a mess. Meng Liang of the Island Patrol Team sent 10 hidden fishers to summon the soul, summoning 36 towns. Meng Liang felt that outsiders had to witness such a shocking battle on the Scattered Stars Island. Also, although countless soldiers of the Scattered Stars Island had died, most people were in a mixed state of joy and sorrow. Someone looked up to the sky and shouted, "The war is finally over." Someone sat casually on the sand that was full of corpses of sea demons and took out a bottle of wine from his swallowing seashell. Slurp. Ah. The man gulped down a mouthful of wine and sprinkled it on the beach. Liu Zi, we won. I'll take you home. On some battlefields, some teams were already in chaos. They sat together and laughed. Someone shouted, "I've never felt so good in my life. I really want to go back and sleep for 3 days and 3 nights." Someone laughed and scolded, "If you go back, can you still sleep? I'm afraid you won't even dare to sleep for 3 hours." Someone sighed leisurely. "I wonder how General Han and the others are doing." The Scattered Stars Island won, but General Han and the others are still fighting. 2 more died. It can be seen how fierce the battle has been. Everyone nodded. At this moment, there was still some red rain floating in the sky. After all of them were dignified Exalt Realm experts, and they ought to be figures of legend. But today, one after another died. During Shueishenqi's reign, there hadn't been a single venerable who died. After the battle, it was time to clean up the battlefield and treat the injuries. The people of the Tactical Command Center were arranging some uninjured soldiers nearby to quickly clean up the battlefield. All the resources were not allowed to be pocketed. After calculating the casualties of each division and regiment, the Logistics Readiness Bureau would make a unified allocation. Of course, occasionally, some thieves would sneak in and steal, and they would turn a blind eye to it. But there were no big thieves. While cleaning up the periphery of the battlefield, some people were secretly observing. After all, the Scattered Stars Island was a military island, and rules were rules. Winning a battle wasn't the work of just one person. Taking credit for everyone else's work was a violation of military rules and would be punished. More than 4 hours after the battle, this kind of cleaning work was still in full swing. In addition to cleaning the battlefield, The busiest people were the spirit gatherers on the Scattered Stars Island. They all began to swallow spiritual fruits and began to treat the large number of wounded. Those who were seriously wounded after the battle were all gathered together and surrounded by many spirit gatherers. In fact, those who should have died had already died. At that time, Han Fei and the others were fighting and couldn't make it in time to treat them. In fact, there were actually many excellent spirit gatherers on the island. Those who could survive had generally been saved at the first moment. As long as they could survive, they basically wouldn't die. Everyone was a cultivator. How serious the injury could be regarded as certain death. Except for those who were deeply poisoned and couldn't be saved, basically all the people who were still alive could be saved. It was just that the severity of the injury, the sequelae, and whether or not it would damage his foundation were unknown. On the coast of the Path of Giants, tens of thousands of wounded were lying on the beach. The spirit gatherers were rotating batch after batch. Someone shouted, "Hurry up, the next batch of spirit gatherers go. Keep them alive. Use spiritual fruits to keep them alive." Some people's intestines were broken, their mouths and noses were bleeding, and their muscles were tense. Under such circumstances, this person was still swallowing spiritual energy and trying to run a technique to slowly recover himself. However, the effect was mediocre. His half-transformed body was almost smashed, and he took a solid blow from the sea demon's water explosion. Spirit gatherers, treat me. I don't want to be disabled." A spirit gatherer cursed, "Don't King move. You can go to the battlefield again as soon as you make it through one day." Next to this person, a family was already holding one of his thighs and roaring, "Hey, fix my leg first. If you can't, I'll have no leg." A spirit gatherer shouted, "CK off. Your upper half of your thigh has lost a whole piece of flesh. You have to recover your flesh first before you can fix it. Otherwise, your spiritual vein will be blocked, which will be a hidden danger." There were countless such examples, and all kinds of wails and screams were endless. Swish! Suddenly, above the tens of thousands of wounded, the void was torn apart, and a figure came walking over. "Is Marshal Han? Marshal, nice to meet you. Marshal Han. Marshal, did we really win? Marshal Han, do we still have to fight in the future?" Han Fei shouted, "If you have anything to say, wait until we go to the Sea God Square outside the central city tomorrow. Now all the non-wounded retreat a kilometer." In an instant, those spirit gatherers retreated one after another. They had heard that Marshal Han was a top spirit gatherer. Was Marshal Han going to take action in person? Han Fei stepped on the ground, and a spirit gathering circle appeared, gathering the surrounding spiritual energy. Holy light chain. Sizzle, sizzle, under Han Fei. A pillar of holy light descended, and the moment it landed, it turned into thousands of lightning chains in the blink of an eye, rushing into the bodies of thousands of wounded. Hiss! Waves of gasps could be heard, as well as moans of pleasure. There were tens of thousands of spectators, and when they saw this miraculous healing technique, they all let out exclamations of surprise. Someone exclaimed, "Damn, is this a healing technique, Marshal Han? Isn't it too powerful? Healing 1,000 people at a time? Is this a skill that a spirit gatherer can do?" Nonsense, of course not. Do you think any spirit gatherer is as good as Marshal Han? Then let him take the position of Supreme Commander. In everyone's surprised eyes, holy light chains descended one after another. Han Fei's body surged with spiritual energy, and he took out the sky hanging mirror. In the next moment, Han Fei appeared in the sky. Han Fei looked indifferent, and his voice was thunderous. "Everyone, arbiters and centurions, immediately gather all the wounded on the Scattered Stars Island and gather them in the Sea God Square outside the central city. I will treat them together. Tomorrow morning, the whole army will gather in the Sea God Square outside the central city. I will have a happy event to celebrate with you." Someone suddenly looked back. "Is Marshal Han back?" Someone said in surprise. "I knew that Marshal Han couldn't have died. The two venerables who died later must have been from the sea race." Everywhere, the wounded all shouted, "Come on, brother, send me to the central city." I trust Marshal Han's healing technique. Someone was still being treated, but he immediately shouted, "Bro, don't treat me. I'm going to the Sea God Square to be treated." The spirit gatherer was speechless. "You just slashed me a few times. Can't I cure you?" The man waved his hand. "What do you know? Marshal Han treated me in person. How can it be the same?" The spirit gatherer. Chapter 1453. In this battle, countless warriors on the human side had died. Many people lingered on the battlefield, harvesting the spoils of war and collecting the remains of their deceased comrades. Those who were injured were sent to the Sea God Square as soon as possible. Someone was still wailing in the blood-red sea. He was carried up and thrown into a fishing boat. The man was still shouting, "No, I'm the only one left in the team. I won't go." The rescue team of the Dangling Fishers Union roared. "Why the F***CK are you crying? Snap out of it. Haven't you seen enough life and death on the Scattered Stars Island? Look at you. You're bleeding like a crab. Marshal Han is treating you in person. Why don't you go?" Some members of the pioneer group scattered in the sea area were running to tell each other, F***CK, stop fighting. Let's go back to the island. Let's go back to the island. The Scattered Stars Island has changed. Even though there was an order to assemble, people were sent in batches. Most of the people who came first were wounded from the various defense lines of the Scattered Stars Island. Some of the wounded in the remote sea area took a long time to gradually return to the island. Sea God Square was packed to the brim. It spanned dozens of kilometers, and there were people everywhere, rubbing shoulders with one another. When the people of the Trans-Island Patrol Team came here with the sightseeing groups from the 536 towns, these people's faces all turned green. After all, there had never been such a large-scale life-and-death battle in the 36 towns. Now, they saw so many strong people in miserable states. These people were all powerful existences in their eyes. Some of these strong people were still coming one after another. Their wings were bald, their bodies were dripping with blood, and their bodies were full of holes. These people from the 36 towns had never seen such miserable hidden fishers. There were many hundreds of such strong people flying in the sky. Those who could still fly flew over on their own. Those who couldn't fly were all carried over by fishing boats. They were all hanging fishers, and there were almost no dangling fishers. Most of these people's injuries were the same, and their bodies were full of holes. They were not to be blamed. Almost all the sea demons used harpoons as weapons. Wouldn't the harpoons make holes in their eyes? Some people hadn't even pulled out their harpoons because they were stabbed in the wrong places. If someone's neck was pierced, as long as the harpoon was pulled out, he would probably die on the spot. Therefore, if these people did not hang on to their lives, they would have died a long time ago. In front of the sightseeing team, the leader shouted, "Okay, I think you've seen it when you flew here on the fishing boat. These are the soldiers of the Scattered Stars Island." The number of casualties in this battle was not as simple as just a few 100,000. Those who are still alive, who doesn't have any injuries on their bodies. Wang Jie and He Mingtang trembled slightly. The village head and Li Gang were fine, as they had seen some of the world. Of course, the village chief was the calmest. After all, he was already old. Having presided over a village for so long, he had seen his fair share of experts. Wang Jie. Village chief, aren't there too many strong people in this world? Village chief sneered. What do you think? How could the Blue Sea town be sure of experts? Where's this place? It was the legendary unknown place. You all saw the battle just now. More than 10 of the legendary supreme experts of the 9 heavens and 10 earths were killed in an instant. Gang leader killed quite a few of them by himself. Li Gang quickly interjected. He looked so excited, as if he had killed all those venerables. The sky curtain had long been closed, and no one knew where Han Fei was. Just when the Sea God Square was almost full, with a buzz, Han Fei appeared in the sky. Huh! General Han! General Han! General Han is here. General Han, we won. As soon as Han Fei came, the whole scene was in an uproar. Those guys who were still lying on the ground and groaning even jumped up at this moment. Han Fei shouted, "Lie down, all of you. It won't be too late to get excited after I treat everyone's injuries." Han Fei thought that this was probably the last time he could harvest the power of will in the next few years. Oh no, tomorrow morning, maybe there would be another chance. However, Han Fei didn't want to miss any opportunity now. Want to harvest the power of will? The scene must be grand, and his aura must be strong enough. Han Fei's expression was solemn, and his voice was solemn. Everyone, after your injuries are healed, rest on the spot and directly enter the state of cultivation. At this moment, under the excitement of the crowd, there were at least 1 million people coming over. They just wanted to see the magical scene of Han Fei's group healing. For many people, this was still a rumor. Today, they were finally lucky enough to see it. How could they not come? Huh! With a roar, Han Fei's body suddenly expanded. In the blink of an eye, he became a giant more than 20 meters tall. The surface of the giant's body was golden. Han Fei shouted, "I said, let there be light." At that instant, several pillars of light came crashing down from the sky. The beams of light landed, and in an instant, they broke into thousands of tentacles. The holy, healing, divine light rippled among the tens of millions of wounded people. At that moment, the blood rain in the sky stopped in an instant. The raindrops floated in the air, and the clouds and mist in the sky suddenly cleared, forming a dense fog. Those beams of light penetrated the clouds and mist, purified the blood rain, and illuminated a clear sky. Hum, 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 like the pulse of the sky and the earth. In a breath, the injuries of tens of millions of people recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Shoot, my injuries are healed, and my flesh and blood are growing. I feel my body is light. My hidden injuries for many years are also healed. Martial Han is so mighty. My eyes can actually see now. Bam! Some people directly broke through and could no longer suppress the power in their bodies. With Han Fei's healing technique, they easily broke through the barrier. Below, every second, thousands of people stood up from the ground. These people all looked up, bathed in this holy light, and their hearts were fanatical. Of course, thinking of Martial Han's words, they immediately sat cross-legged and began to cultivate. In a crowd of onlookers, exclamations rose and fell. A few of them exchanged glances with one another with strange expressions on their faces. Luo Xiaobai's mouth twitched. He hasn't become a king yet, and he's already doing these fancy things? Lu Renquang looked envious. When can I be as domineering as Han Fei? It's only been a few years. If he didn't tell me, I would have thought he had become a king. And he even said, I want their light. F***, I'm so jealous. Zhang Xuanyu smacked his lips. How many girls will see this guy's charm? No, I'll become a king first. I want to become a venerable. When the time comes, I'll stab a venerable with my spear. Next to Zhang Xuanyu, a girl was exclaiming. Hearing Zhang Xuanyu's words, she couldn't help but turn her head. She was first shocked by Zhang Xuanyu's appearance, and after a full minute, she snorted. You can't even compare with Han Fei's temperament. Zhang Xuanyu. In the sightseeing group of the 36 towns, even the village leader couldn't help but say, our heavenly water village is going to be famous, very famous. Our village has given birth to a super strong master. Our heavenly water village. Cough, cough. The village leader was so excited that his face was flushed. He looked like the last radiance of the setting sun. Han Fei's eyelids twitched, and with a thought, a healing divine light fell on the village leader's body. In an instant, the village leader was furious and felt that his body and mind were cleansed. Gotcha! Almost in an instant, the village leader, who had been stuck at the level of a peak-level great fishing master, directly made a breakthrough, and the stubborn disease in his body was directly cleared. He became a dangling fisher in one fell swoop. He felt that he was 10 years younger all of a sudden, and even his white hair turned black at a speed visible to the naked eye. Around the village leader, everyone looked at him. Even the members of the Round Island inspection team, who brought them here, couldn't help but envy him. It said that Martial Han came from this small village. The village leader must have treated him very well in the past. Swish! While Han Fei was healing everyone, the void was suddenly torn apart. Many people were taken aback, thinking that something was wrong. Meow. After God Shui got up, a big cat rushed out first. The moment it saw Han Fei, it immediately shouted, "Han Fei, the cat hurts." At this moment, Big Yellow was really covered in wounds. Except for his ears, his whole body was wounded. Even his eyelids had been cut by something, and his 2 claws had been split apart. Behind Big Yellow, people rushed out one after another. Every one of them was dripping with blood. Many people used spirit energy and spirit fruits to keep themselves afloat so that they wouldn't perish on the way. Ning Jingyao's arms were broken. Du Jiangliu's twisted domain didn't help him dodge the attack. There was a big hole in his body. Without Xue Shenqi's voice transmission, an explorer in the crowd roared, "Marshal Han, we were ordered to attack the 10,000 Demon Valley. 3,068 people went, 2,502 came back, and 566 people died. All the troops were wounded. We faced the 800,000 troops of the 10,000 Demon Valley and slaughtered 100,000 of them. Fortunately, we returned alive." There was no telling if it was Xue Shenqi who taught this man to say that. Even Han Fei was quite shocked after hearing that. When the ordinary people heard this, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. More than 3,000 people attacked an army of 800,000? There were more than 3,000 people here. How strong were they? Many people looked at him in admiration. They must have been the strongest people on the Scattered Stars Island. During the battle, many people thought that their battle had been extremely difficult. However, they couldn't imagine what the 3,000 people had experienced at all. Someone remarked, "Not that I'm bragging, but 3,000 against 800,000. If I were there, I would have been reduced to ashes in the first encounter." Someone remarked, "That's a real heavenly talent. Slaying 100,000 enemies? I'm impressed." Suddenly, Wang Jie exclaimed, "Xiaoyu, Mr. He, it's He Xiaoyu." He Mingtong's eyes widened. When he saw He Xiaoyu, whose hair was sticky with blood, and when He Xiaoyu was still bleeding, he felt dizzy. Meow. As Big Yellow barked again, the heavenly awakening divine art was cast, and the injuries of the 2,500 people quickly recovered. He Xiaoyu was stunned too. She didn't know how she came back. 3 of the 5 people on the team had died. A few days ago, they had dinner together, and now they were gone. If Jiuyin Ling hadn't been looking after her, she would have been beheaded. She was still a long way from being a real heavenly talent after all. Jiuyin Ling, on the other hand, was indifferent. She made it back alive after all. Seeing that Han Fei performed a marvelous technique, she couldn't help but put on a smile. Chapter 1454. After healing the wounded and harvesting a wave of power of will, Han Fei returned to the Marshal's mansion. The Marshal's mansion had always been very large. Han Fei didn't go to see the village leader and Wang Jie immediately. Instead, he invited Luo Xiaobai and the others to have hot pot in the Marshal's mansion. However, only the 4 of them were going to have hot pot this time. Even Jiuyin Ling wasn't included. "Fatty, I just want to know, what have you been doing these years? Have you become a chef?" Han Fei looked at the fancy and innovative dishes on the table. Suddenly, he was a little surprised. They looked King delicious. Lu Rinquang immediately shook the fat on his face and said, "You may not believe it, but I was caught by a strange old man. I only did 2 things every day, eat and sleep and eat. I had to figure it out myself. After thinking about it, I found that cooking was actually quite simple." Zhang Xuanyu rolled his eyes and said, "I don't believe you. I was the one who was pitiful. I suddenly had a pair of parents-in-law, as well as a crafty old servant. They are thinking of ways to destroy me every day." As he spoke, Zhang Xuanyu suddenly looked to Han Fei. "Fei, tell me honestly, where did Yi Xiyin go? Don't let her come back. Otherwise, within a year, the 3 of you will definitely come to my wedding." Luo Xiaobai picked up a piece of squid, stuffed it in her mouth, and said indifferently, "Isn't that what you want?" Yin Yan's appearance is stunning. After 7 or 8 years, she has already grown into a young lady. Zhang Xuanyu was taken aback by Luo Xiaobai's words. He immediately touched his chin and said, "Hey, what you said is not without reason. In my impression, Ishiyin has always been that naughty little girl. Hearing Zhang Xuanyu's bragging, Han Fei reached out and pinched Zhang Xuanyu's shoulder. Zhang Xuanyu shouted, "Ouch, ouch, it hurts. Don't you know how strong you are now?" Han Fei asked in confusion, "How did your body become so strong?" "You have cultivated the 108 desolate god body." Han Fei had watched Zhang Xuanyu grow up since he was a child. In the past, he was a little conservative and didn't give the 108 spirit-absorbing war bodies to Zhang Xuanyu and the others. Later, he regretted it, but he missed the best time and it seemed a little too late. However, the more he thought about it, the longer it was. The longer it was, the more difficult it would be to cultivate. Zhang Xuanyu suddenly became strange. Then we have to talk about the old servant of the Yi family. In the past 7 years, he broke my bones 7 times. Every time, he was extremely cruel, and his methods were unbearable to look at. Crush all the bones in my body, then soak them in great medicine. Then every time I shatter my bones, I'll cultivate your 108 desolate god body. Now, all that's left is to unite the 8 acupoints. Han Fei remembered that after experiencing the ideal palace and coming out of the ideal palace, Zhang Xuanyu was beaten black and blue. At that time, he had handed over the 108 desolate god body. Han Fei of the 108 desolate body refining, he a body. Fei said. Xiaoyang, Iliavi of the Chong of Li. Luren Kuang quickly said, "Fortunately, I don't practice body tempering. As long as I can still eat, my physique will become stronger." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "Demonic plants have always been tough. I have awakened the divine skill of the Luo family and have the blessing of the Dao seed, so my physique is not weak." Seeing that the other party was more relaxed than him, Zhang Xuanyu said with a sad face, "According to that old servant, I still have to have my bones broken twice." Han Fei couldn't help patting Zhang Xuanyu's shoulder. "Remember, the effect will definitely be different when you have the desolate god body." Suddenly, Han Fei patted his head and waved his hand, and more than 300 energy fruits appeared. Then, he quickly classified these energy fruits. In the end, he handed them to the 3 of them. Gulp. Luren Kuang immediately swallowed and said, "They look delicious." Smack. Han Fei slapped him. "You only know how to eat. You eat everything? These are all ultra-quality spiritual fruits. Any one of them is priceless outside. Don't eat all of them before you pass the tribulation." Luo Xiaobai exclaimed in surprise. "Are you giving us these energy fruits for us to pass the tribulation?" Han Fei nodded. "These spiritual fruits are mostly ultra-quality spiritual fruits that can nourish the flesh and blood, stimulate the body's potential, and strengthen the physique. Even with your current strength, taking one will be of great benefit." Zhang Xuanyu took it without hesitation and asked, "With this, I don't need to break my bones, right?" Han Fei glanced at Zhang Xuanyu contemptuously, thinking, "It's just breaking your bones a few times. If I let you cultivate the indestructible body, what will you do?" Looking at Han Fei's eyes, Zhang Xuanyu shrugged. Okay, there's still 2 more times. I'll just endure it." Luo Xiaobai said, "In the past few years, you have crossed a major realm. Now you have the power to kill a venerable. Are you about to become a venerable?" Hearing Luo Xiaobai's question, they all looked at Han Fei. Han Fei's growth was really too fast, so fast that it was unbelievable. They guessed that Han Fei must have passed the tribulation now. However, they didn't expect that Han Fei could already kill a venerable. Han Fei took a bite of the grilled fish and chuckled. "Are you jealous? I have long said that I am talented and will become a king." They all glanced at Han Fei contemptuously, and Luo Xiaobai said, "We are still too slow after all. You have just ruled the Scattered Stars Island this time. Since you have completely declared war on the 1,000-star city, the 36 towns will be your territory. Your road is not easy." Luo Xiaobai's straightforward personality hadn't changed. At first glance, she focused on the situation in front of Han Fei. Zhang Xuanyu also said, "Compared with my 2 broken bones, I think although you are strong now, you are in big trouble." Luren Kuang took up a bite of lobster meat and nodded repeatedly. "You are the only one who has to bear the burden." Han Fei grinned and said grumpily, What are you talking about? Let me tell you, your vision has limited your thinking. Do you think I'm having a hard time now? When you become a real strong master, when you become a venerable, you will find that this so-called difficult is actually not difficult. All of you are unable to imagine just how strong a person's strength can be. The three of them looked at Han Fei, who was a little crazy. How could they not be familiar with Han Fei? Seeing Han Fei like this, they knew he was excited. This meant that what Han Fei said was what he was thinking. In his opinion, the burden and pressure on him were not very big. Lu Renquang asked dumbly, "Then how strong can a person be?" Han Fei's eyes narrowed into a line. There were some secrets that he didn't need to hide from the three of them. If he told them, it would let them know that there were infinite pursuits in this world. Han Fei said, "The world we are in is called the Yin-Yang Heaven. It stretches for 8 million kilometers and is sealed here by a huge seal. That seal is called the Wall of Death." Wow! In an instant, the eyes of the three of them lit up and their hearts trembled. These were all secrets they had never heard of. In their impression, outside the distant sea, wasn't it the boundless sea? Han Fei said, "In the Yin-Yang Heaven, there is a sacred place called the Immortal Palace. Since ancient times, a king can rule a territory. In this endless sea, there are a total of 36 territories like the Yin-Yang Heaven." Puff! Lu Renquang spat out the grilled fish in his mouth and looked at Han Fei in astonishment. "How many?" Han Fei said seriously. "You heard me right. There were 36 such places. There might be more than one king at each location." Luo Xiaobai asked, "What about the kings of the Yin-Yang Heaven?" Han Fei smiled and said, "Do you remember the pair of eyes we saw in the starbead? You should know the name of that thing, the Eye of the Great Path. That thing restricts the birth of kings of the Yin-Yang Heaven. So if you want to become a king, you have to go to the outer domain or the Immortal Palace." Zhang Xuanyu said, "The place above the central divine throne of the thousand-star city." Han Fei said, "Although this has always been the speculation of the big clans, this speculation is very likely to be true. Not everyone can go to the Immortal Palace. It's just like not everyone has great luck. My father, has been planning for many years, but he can't control me. But now even I believe that I will be the king of the thousand-star city." Han Fei spread his hands. In the eyes of outsiders, the Yin-Yang Heaven is a barren land. We are no different from the natives. There are hundreds of venerables there. On our side, there are only a few dozen venerables. Now, do you still think I'm under a lot of pressure? After a while, when Han Fei revealed some less important information, the three of them were shocked by Han Fei. Luo Xiaobai was the first to come back to her senses. "Have you been to other territories? How many kings are there?" Han Fei's tribulation in the Waterwood Heaven was a secret. In the eyes of Luo Xiaobai and the others, it was not a secret. Han Fei didn't hide it and said lightly, "300 of venerables." Zhang Xuanyu cursed, "Son of a b****. Okay, that's enough. After this meal, I'm going to bone crush her. Go where you should go. See you in the future." Luo Xiaobai took a breath. "I've been cultivating in the thousand-star city for a long time, and I'm going to the Scattered Stars Island to gain more experience. Now that humans have won a great victory, I should be able to go to the outer sea." Slurp, Lu Renquang said, "I'm going back to transcend a tribulation." Second update. Wedding rehearsal delayed. Awkward moi. End of this chapter.